The meeting of the Town Council Bylaws and Ordinance Committee. And we're going to take up issues of e-bikes and the rules of the Town Council. And we have some distinguished guests, the Chief of Police, John DeFederico, Brian Lutzy, Superintendent of Schools, our beloved council, Nick Bamonte, Greg Riley is here, and Maria's on Zoom. So actually, I want to start with our guests. What I wanted to do is to give a sort of an update on how the town as a whole has evolved is evolving in our treatment of e-bike riders and such. And the most important pieces of this. So town council is not the only body, and probably is one of the lesser important bodies involved in this, because we need to socialize the culture of safety throughout the town. And I think Hillary and I have looked at from the enforcement angle and have talked to the chief, and he says that we're pretty good on our ability to enforce the rules, and the police have their own what they think is the most effective way to do that. Maybe you could comment, John, a little bit on that. I know we've talked about it before, but give us an update.
Yeah, sure. As far as enforcement, there's rules and laws in place that currently govern safe use of the roads by anybody that's on a bike or using the roadways. So we feel that the ordinances or laws or statutes are already in place. What we need is to gain compliance, and that's where I think our approach with the schools and Dr. Lutzy and with the grant that Greg Riley has helped us get, we feel that that's going to be the most effective way to make an impact and see a desired change, rather than just add another ordinance or law or something that needs to be enforced that the kid is not going to resonate with the target audience that we want to get to.
And tell us a little bit about the grant. I've heard about it, but I don't know the details.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Greetings all. So I found an opportunity from the Connecticut Department of Transportation micro grant. It's an annual program that they make available to municipalities through the COGS for small programs. This is not a large grant. This is only $5,000. However, the stated purpose that we put forth was that we want to create materials and disseminate information to educate the community on proper use of e-bikes and local roads. When I did the application, I will say with Tucker Murphy's encouragement, I reached out to the chief, I reached out to the superintendent, and it was wonderful. And of course, Deanna Carlson was on board with going after the application, going after the funds. It was great to have such high level support, and it's maybe one of the reasons why we got the grant. And so Dr. Lutzy, I know, can talk a little bit more about the program that we plan to implement in short order, starting, I believe it's underway already. We hope to have it done within the next 12 months, that is produced and disseminated. So that's the story.
Thank you, Greg. And welcome back to town. We missed you.
Happy to be back. Thank you all.
So, Dr. Lutzy, maybe you could give us a little bit of an update on what you're doing.
Sure, be glad to.
do.
Sure, and thanks for the invitation to join you tonight. So when this issue started to arise back a couple of months ago, we had a discussion and made a decision. Really, the best approach in something like this isn't to do something to the students, but to do something with the students. So taking a page out of the book of design thinking and the work that we've been doing with the Yonder Pouches and other work over at the middle school, we've been working to put together a group of kids who will be our design thinking team, who are working to understand really the problem and they'll be involved in helping us to communicate and to teach and to get the message out around appropriate use, and who knows what other ideas they might have. Because I think it's very important as we're having this conversation as adults and doing this work, there are so many good things about the fact that kids are riding their bikes. That means they're not inside, they're not looking at their phones, they're not on video games, they're doing things that we want and hope and expect kids to do. So we don't want it to be a punishment-driven type approach. I think that we can do things in a way with them so they understand the importance of safety and the significance of the rules and what we're doing, and but at the same time encourage them to be active, to be outside, to be social, and be doing the things that we want and encourage our kids to be doing. So by engaging the students in a group, I know they're going to be reaching out, if they haven't already, to the folks here on the call, certainly to the chief, certainly with Greg, with Deanna and Tucker, certainly Tom, you and Hillary and others, to understand the problem, to come up with some good ideas, and to help us develop a program for communication, both to students and to the adult drivers.
And that's very encouraging. There are certain things that you guys can't do, you know, and so one of them, I think, and I noticed in terms of an age limit, I came across the fact that there are a number of states, 8 or 9 states, that have statewide have an age restriction. Typically, it's 16. One is 15, one's 14. And it occurred to me that, and one of them is New York State, and they're of course right on our border. And so it occurred to me that, you know, what does it take to live with myself when I, you know, get up in the morning and go to shave and hopefully not cut myself? How can I live with myself if somebody, you know, if a 12-year-old or 11-year-old was killed on an e-bike and I didn't take notice of these age restrictions? So I asked Nick if, because I know people have raised this issue, is that within our purview as a town? Typically, it's being done by states, but maybe Nick can tell us his reaction as to whether we could impose an age limit by ordinance in New Canaan.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening, everybody. Nicholas Pamonti from Town Attorney's Office. Yeah, when you raised the question to me a couple of weeks ago, I looked at a few spots in Connecticut law that could enable this, and ultimately, in my opinion, the answer is yes. I think we do have fairly broad discretion at the local level to craft our own ordinances in a way that we think appropriate to address, to effectively address the safety concerns for both the public and the users of these e-bikes. Our state law, like I just said, is fairly broad, but it has not been, to my knowledge at least, implemented to this level in Connecticut by a municipality. So we would be a trendsetter, so to speak, in that regard. But like you say, Tom, there in some of our sister states who have similar statewide codes, at least, these have obviously been implemented. And it seems like our legislature is signaling through the language of the enabling laws for these purposes that an age limit is something that's on the table. I think the legislature is signaling, hey, Connecticut towns and municipalities, we're giving you some breathing room here to craft an ordinance that you think's appropriate based on what you're seeing in other states, other towns, in your local community. So the short answer is yes, I think we can do it.
Actually, I didn't ask the second part of that, but we can maybe get into this now. Hopefully the analysis is the same. And we'll come back to the age limit in a minute. But again, one thing that the schools and the police can do is go, Greg's help, get the funding, is to go and educate people. But the one thing they can't do is make education mandatory by law. And so would that be you think the same answer, most likely, that we would, if we wanted to have a mandatory education process similar to driver's school, that would be within our purview as well.
I think it is. Well, challenge might be too strong of a word, but it's the logistics and practicality that would come along with that. Meaning,
Right.
How do we prove someone has had that and satisfied that mandatory education? Is it some kind of sticker? Is it some kind of license? I mean, that's for you folks to figure out. But again, we don't have at least in Connecticut, we don't have examples from other towns to look to. So Tom, I don't know if in your investigations on other states, if any, states have implemented this sort of mandatory education requirement and how they go about satisfying proof, so to speak.
I don't know that the states have, but I think a number of municipalities around the country have done this. But I didn't bring my notes on that. This too would be something that I think only the town council could do. So my proposal is that we give the police and the schools broad leeway to do what they do best, and we couldn't replicate. But I do think that not necessarily for immediate solution, but these are two issues that I think we owe it to the citizens to discuss. So I'll open the floor. What your reactions are first to the age limit. And by the way, I have an idea about practicality for the regarding the education requirement, but I'll hold that off until we get into some of the policy discussions.
Can I ask a question of Nick? Hi, Nick. It's Kim Norton, Town Council. The state law on e-bikes, I looked at it. Isn't there a limit of age 16?
No. Well, yes and no. There is an existing requirement in state law that for a certain class, the most powerful class of e-bikes, you have to be 16. For the other classes, there is no age limit. So that's what Tom's question is driving at.
Okay, are there any other state laws governing the e-bikes that address any of Tom's, issues that he's bringing up, or any other restrictions that would be good for us to know before we start trying to craft our own? I mean, I've looked at it, but.
Sorry, I'm not quite following the question. I mean, these are the laws that apply specifically to e-bikes. There's also broader general powers under 7148 of the state law that gives us regulatory and police powers to pass ordinances. I mean, if you're asking if there's any express right in state law that a certain age group has a right to ride these e-bikes, that does not exist.
Yeah, thanks.
Could I jump in to just express my reaction to what you're saying? So sort of hearing what the chief said about his sentiment that the ordinances and laws, by the way, this is Jen Zonas for those guys out there, exist. As far as he says that it suffices that the laws and ordinances exist out there at the state level, and that the issues that they face are getting, buy-in from the kids, the parents, to use and follow them. And then the perception in town being like, are we doing anything about this, to those people who are concerned about it? I feel sort of a combination of, publicizing that we got said grant, so the action has been taken on it, and that Dr. Lutzy, and he's got to have this group that he's working with, I don't know if you said it, the high school students or a group, and publicizing that, then we're going to come up with a program, and there's a time frame for it. So it shows that there's action and moving forward. And I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of, in conjunction with that, like the one ordinance that it seems, that wouldn't be cumbersome so much, for the chief and his, if we were to come up with, let's say, an age limit of 16 for that lower speed, I'd be inclined for that, to say, again, to show the town that we are hearing them and acting on it, but not with some, undue burden of a set of rules and ordinances that then become hard for them to implement and that the chief is saying we don't really need.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
go ahead.
my sense was Brian was talking more about the middle school. I mean, most of the people that I see riding e-bikes are like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. By the time someone gets to 16, they get their license, you know, their car driver's license. So I do agree that it's great to see kids off of their phones, exercising, out in the community, riding their bikes, which is usually to me like 12 to 16, 12 to 15. But I like the idea of education. I just don't know how to implement it. I think that's a smart idea. But I also heard from the chief that you said, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief DeFrederico, but you said compliance is an issue?
Well, sure, that's what we're ultimately seeking is compliance with safe driving rules for the kids on the e-bikes. That's why we're discussing this, is we want to have kids become compliant with traffic laws and ride their bikes safely. I don't think we're here discussing because kids are riding their bikes safely and we're not addressing those kids. We want to address the ones that are riding unsafe and the wrong way down Elm Street or on the sidewalks or whatnot. You know, so that's what I'm talking about when I say compliance.
Right. So my goal would be to try to meet that need. How could we get compliance
Yeah.
so that in town, in Elm Street and other places, that kids are safe and that drivers are safe as well?
And I think in a minute, it'd be useful to ask all our guests, but particularly Brian and the chief is, what are the ages? What would be the right age in terms of child development, in terms of, you know, what peer group support you get and whatever, in terms of physical abilities, in terms of where they are in school, what would be an age, you know, that would feel appropriate? But before I do that, let me ask the other town council members if you had some initial thoughts.
Hillary Ormond, hi, everyone. My one sort of overriding safety concern with putting an age limit on or regulating it further, are we then pushing the kids out of town? If this is done on a town basis, are we encouraging 12 and 13-year-olds to ride to Wilton or Rowayton, Norwalk, or whatever, to get around that? Because we only have power within our own border. And so are we creating an unsafe situation where kids are going to want to get out of town as quickly as possible and get to another town where there aren't these rules? And, you know, my 12-year-old happens to look like a 16-year-old. So she probably, if she was driving something relatively safely, she would not get stopped, which I guess is the point. But she is 12, so she's going to do some stupid things too. Like, she's not going to be a perfect rider. So those are just sort of the things that pop top of mind, is when you don't have something that's statewide and we have porous borders, so to speak, between municipalities. Are we encouraging a less safe situation where they'll leave? I know of kids my daughter's age who do leave, who have gone to meet their friends in Rowayton on electric bikes, and that scares me to no end.
But devil's advocate, maybe if we set the standard, maybe Wilton catches word of it, like maybe they're inclined to follow.
Yeah, I'm just thinking between now and then. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we've looked at this for a little while too. It takes a long time to make these changes. And is it better to do, as with a lot of things, is it better to do it piecemeal by municipality where you have 169 different rules in Connecticut? Or is it better to push our legislature to do something while we do an education piece? These are just things, I'm sort of agnostic about an age limit. I think it sounds like a great idea. My mind goes to the sort of extremes.
Christina Ross, to your comment, I think that we have the opposite. I think we have kids from Stamford, Wilton, and Norwalk coming with their e-bikes here. And over the past several weeks, I have seen some pretty dangerous cases on South Avenue with the kids weaving in and out of cars and going at high speeds. And I've also seen kids going all the way up north on Oak Ridge. And when it comes to Parade Hill, they don't stop. They keep on going, whether there's traffic coming or not, and they don't have a headlight. They don't have lights. They're not wearing a helmet. They're traveling at a high speed. So I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think the sooner we implement something, the safer at least we can create an environment where there may be peer pressure to be safe. The other issue is when we're talking about safety, are they required to wear helmets? Can we limit it to just one person on an e-bike? I've seen 2 kids on an e-bike. So there are other things that come into play with safety that I think we have to consider.
How do you know they're from Stamford, Wilton, and Norwalk?
Some of the other kids have said that they're from other towns.
Can we ask the chief, have you noticed that?
No, I've not noticed that.
2 quick points. Helmets are already required, right, chief? So
That is correct. The dual riders and the helmets, those statutes already exist.
but the dual rider concept is, I think, embedded in state law. I'm not sure we could tinker with that because state law already regulates how old you have to be. I think maybe there, I don't know if there's an age issue there for, probably not for the guest rider, but there are some regulations about people who ride on e-bikes, and they all contemplate that riders are okay, passengers are okay. Doesn't sound very safe to me, but
I don't, this is Eric Tunham. I don't know what the laws are about guest riders and additional riders. I'd be curious, Chief, if you see 2 kids on a bicycle, not an e-bike, I mean, is that against any ordinances or laws?
I believe it is prohibited under the e-bike rules.
So
already.
then, like that,
Okay.
so like the helmet rule, we're already covered on 2 riders and helmets. Personally, I wish they'd require everybody on a bicycle to wear a helmet, but that's my own opinion. There are a couple of issues here. I think imposing an age limit of 16 would have some pretty serious backlash from the host of children in our community who already own these e-bikes. And we should, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but I think we should be prepared for that. Secondly, the age of 16 is the age at which they can operate a motor vehicle. So motor vehicle, e-bike, I mean, I really don't know how that addresses the issue because we are still going to see, I'm sure, 12, 13, and 14-year-olds on e-bikes. Personally, I believe these are motor vehicles, and we should approach the issue the same way we approach the issue of training young people to drive motor vehicles. And so I think the educational way we go about this is critical. And I think working with Dr. Lutzing, the schools, and Chief, educating middle school kids about the safety rules of operating a motor vehicle on public roads. They need to hear that what they are doing is not pedaling a bicycle down the street. They are operating a motorized vehicle on a public highway. And that's a serious thing to be doing, and they ought to be educated seriously about the risks of doing that.
Brian?
Yes, the age question came up, so we are talking about the middle school and really involving them. Eric, you're exactly right, that when they get into the high school, really 16, they're driving, their other friends are driving. And so we really, that has been our target group, has been the middle school. I guess, I just have a quick question. I don't know if everyone knows the answer, but we're saying e-bikes and sort of lumping them all together. Are they all the same? Are there different sizes? I don't know how much detail we want to get into, but I know like scooters, Vespas, if it's below 50 cc, you don't need a motorcycle license, or below 49, 50 and above you do. I know things are there different nuances to this that make it even more complex to govern in its own way? But anyway, that's just a question that came to mind. But for our purposes, the goal for us really is to have this group of middle school kids, and they're already together and talking about it a bit, helping us to design those educational programs so that it's not the peanuts teacher in the front, wah, 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 and then kids walk out of the room and don't know what happened. We want it to be effective. And we've talked with Greg, I've talked with Greg and Tucker, and Matt Blank over at the middle school is doing a fantastic job working with Kristen Kleiss and putting this group together and making these connections. So regardless of the decisions of the group here, we're going to go forward with that because I feel strongly that this is important for our kids to know. We do have a good number of kids that ride e-bikes to school in the mornings. Although in the last couple of weeks, that's waned a bit, but we expect it to pick back up here towards the end. And so we do have a good number of kids that are doing that. And we know that it's going to continue to pick up. So regardless of where we land, or where you all land with the ordinance and things, I think this is really good, important work, and it's an opportunity for our kids to sort of see the politics and the town governance in action. By meeting with members of the town council, meeting with John, meeting with Deanna, meeting with Greg, Tucker, others, they get to be a part of something bigger than themselves, which is always very important. So there's lots of positive outcomes from this, regardless of where the conversation lands.
So it's possible that, I mean, one option, if you get specific, one option on an age limit is just to say, let's just deal with the low hanging fruit, the obvious cases. If you're 11 years old, we can't live with that. You're not in junior high. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that age doesn't get you typically.
Fifth grade.
Yeah, well, but okay. When I think of junior high, I think of 7 and 8, but.
Oh, yeah, middle school's 5th and 6th.
Right.
And so.
But if you had that concept of, well, I'm guessing that 90% of the e-bike riders are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. Is that?
That's what we see. I'm not sure if there's anything else that's happening outside, but yeah, we see it's really 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for the most part. There are some 9th graders as well that ride their bikes in the morning, and even 1 or 2 here and there, but the majority tend to be that middle school group, really 7th and 8th grade, 6th grade. Some we don't see a lot of 5th grade.
So if we set the age, if we were to set the age of
Well,
below middle school, that hopefully that wouldn't be conceptually controversial, and it maybe wouldn't offend a lot of the people that are currently riding to school. But Maria?
What is the average age? How young are some of the riders? I'm curious.
I don't know that we know.
But we haven't seen anyone from the school's perspective. We haven't seen anyone riding into any of our elementary schools. So we, as far as I know, there are some that ride bikes over at South, but I don't believe they've been e-bikes. So we've got.
Wondering, sorry, Brian. I'm just wondering. Compliance is the issue when we make a new rule about age. Will they be compliant with that? I feel like we don't need any more new rules. It seems like education and information could head off some of the issues, including parent education. The other thing I was wondering, I mean, if you make an age rule and someone comes into New Canaan from out of town, they don't know it. So now you have to, now you have to enforce that. And then what happens? It seems like it just opens up a whole nother level of logistics. I'm kind of more for the education part, working with that. And I am wondering, when you do the education, is it for all students, or do you kind of find out who's actually on e-bikes and give them the education? How is that working?
From our perspective, that's being developed now. I think it's both, right? I think it's a general, but then we also target some areas. We know some of the kids who might be a little riskier on the bikes, and we can certainly target them in different ways. But it's certainly a general too for all of the kids would be my expectation. Again, we're involving the students in helping to develop that and design it so that it'll resonate better with their peers, and by having them a part of developing it. And kids who already have e-bikes or interested in them, we know, the best way to learn something is to teach it, as you know. So having the kids involved helps to make sure they come away with the lessons we want them to learn.
Tom?
Yeah.
I just want to say, if we were to establish a minimum age to ride e-bikes, it would also help the parents to not succumb to peer pressure from the kids to say, well, you have to wait until your 15th birthday, your 14th birthday, whatever age we decide is appropriate. And those that already have it, the parents may just pull them back because they're not legal in New Canaan.
Right. Yeah, we have a bunch of rules now that pre-existed this debate, both in ordinances and in state law. And this education program is going to reflect all those rules. So it's not like there are no rules. This would just be one more rule, and it wouldn't have perfect compliance. I'm not sure anything we're gonna do is gonna get perfect compliance, but yeah, I would personally rather make a statement that I'm not in favor of 12-year-olds riding e-bikes, or certainly 11-year-olds. I want to put my foot down on that I mean, I may get voted out on this, but I mean, I just think it would be irresponsible not to draw the line somewhere. Because if someone is hurt on the lower end of that line, because we haven't even made the public statement about it, I could live with myself.
So I think a couple of comments back, you actually asked, and I don't want to put them on the spot, but did the chief and Dr. Letzi, did you guys have a feeling, like, does 12 sound like a reasonable age limit? Are you completely opposed to it? Can we hear your take on that, or do you want to remain neutral?
Well, my opinion is that that's not who we're, for lack of a better word, targeting in this. You know, what we're looking at is probably the 8th graders, the 7th graders that are a little bit older, a little bit more inclined to take risks and drive aggressively. I don't think 11-year-olds are the problem that we're looking to address. So I don't know that that's going to be
Make a difference?
that effective. So, but I really do agree with what Eric said, that these are essentially vehicles, but they're motorized vehicles, and these kids need to be educated of what the expectations are as a driver of a vehicle. You know, and they don't know that. They've never probably even thought of that because they're so far removed from getting their driver's license and driver training and that sort of thing. So to develop an education program so they understand the rules of the road, I think is going to go a long way. And at least we can set the expectation of when they're driving a motorized vehicle, what they should be doing.
I'm just wondering about the piece about registration. I know that if you have a dog, you have to get your dog registered in town. So what about the idea of having e-bike riders and their parents get some kind of a registration so that they know that this is a serious responsibility? And then whether it's the program through New Canaan Public Schools or an online program or some kind of certificate that they can show to get their registration before they actually get the registration, that they participated in an online program. I know your program is going to take a while to develop so that we could kind of address this more quickly. I think that would show the seriousness of the responsibility, because it is, they have to follow traffic rules. If they haven't taken driver's ed, they don't know. Maybe they don't know what a stop sign is, or, I don't know how much they know.
Well, the concept that I was thinking of is that, and to be a little more specific, and we'll have to figure out whether everybody thinks this is practical, but, Eric looked into a little bit, maybe you could talk about that. You talked to Lewis School of Driving.
It spoke with Marie Trant on May 12th. And she's the owner of Lewis School of Driving. And she said they would definitely want to be part of any training program for e-bike riders if town council decides to pursue that. So there's a willingness and an openness to do that. She also said she'd be willing to work with Chief and the Canaan Police Department and Dr. Letzi and the Canaan Schools on crafting and or delivering that educational or training program. She said she has a good relationship and regular communication with Tony Guerrera, who's the Connecticut DMV commissioner, and she was going to ask him if there are other towns who've put in place similar training or educational programs. I think that's the way to go, is to do a training and education program. I like the idea of a registration where a child and his or her parents have to say, I want to register this vehicle, and I agree to show proof of having taken a training program within X days or whatever. I think that's leaning more toward at least the appearance of compliance, which is the precursor to real compliance.
Right.
I think that would be great. I don't know how long it would take to develop all that.
But would that mean that, like, those Lewis School of Driving classes are quite expensive? Does that mean each child who's going to get a bike is going to have to pay to do a course?
Well, I think that obviously is a question we'd have to think about, and they'd have to think about. I'm sure there would be a fee that would be charged for that. I don't have any problem with a fee being charged to that. I mean, there's a fee to learn how to drive, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, these children are operating motor vehicles on public highways. And if their parents don't care enough to spend 50 or 60 bucks for a training course, what are they saying about how safe they want their kids to be?
Right, I just feel like I would hope that it would be like, perhaps like, you know, like a moderate amount, like, I mean,
But the-
you don't want it to be like a profit situation for her, like you need
Well, that's
a package of
obviously,
5.
that has to
Yeah.
be part of the whole conversation. obviously.
Folks, can I just jump in for a
Right.
moment here, just so we're clear? It's not quite semantics. Eric, I understand you see these as motor vehicles. They are expressly not motor vehicles under state law. Okay, so I think drawing the comparison is a little out of line here in terms of requiring the same state mandated driver education for real motor vehicles as opposed to what the legislature has specifically said are not motor vehicles.
I understand, and I'm not arguing from a technicality or legal perspective, obviously. Thank you for the clarification.
I mean, the Lewis, just to add, and I understand what you're saying, Nick, the Lewis School of Driving is about 16 classes. It costs $1,000. Then there's driving hours that comes with it and all those things. I mean, I think this could be a lot lighter. It could be like 2 or 3 classes. It could be less expensive specifically targeted for e-bike users. I think it's actually a good precursor to learning to drive, because it teaches kids the rules of the road. I also think it takes care of the age limit, because if a parent decides that an 11-year-old is responsible enough, if they go to the class and they go register with their parents, then I think that is the responsibility of the parent at that point. And I think it takes out the issue for us to put in an age limit, because there are some kids that are in 6th grade that range from 10 and a half to 11 to 12. I mean, like, there's cohorts that are together that are not all the same chronological age. So I think it gets sticky to be able to make an actual age limit, I think.
I think the registration is important, because if one of the kids gets injured, there's no way, they don't have ID on them. They're riding alone. At least there's a number on the bike that you can register back and find the parents. You can't treat a kid without a parent or an adult in an emergency room setting, as far as I know.
Right.
I don't think EMTs or doctors would not treat a child who's critically injured. I mean, I also worry administratively about how a registration would happen. It would have to be, I'm assuming, through the town, and I'm not sure how it would be enforced. Is it only if they're driving recklessly and get pulled over?
No, I think it's a proactive. I'm thinking more proactively, like the way there's so many dogs in town and it only costs $5.
Yeah, no, I know.
So it's like, it would be a proactive thing, like, in order to have the privileges, we would like you to get a registration before you ride on the roads.
Yeah, but the registration only really comes into play if the dog bites somebody. Right? I mean,
Well,
we don't,
that
like,
is-
I don't know, cops are, correct me if I'm wrong, chief, but you're not stopping every dog that you see being walked and making sure that I don't put my
It's a
collar.
license.
I understand that. I'm not finished. I don't put the tag on my dogs. They don't have the rabies tag. They have rabies shots. I have a registration. If they bite someone, then I show it. So I'm just concerned administratively about how we would roll out a register. I mean, I think I just worry that we're getting a little ahead of ourselves with it. And I'm curious to see how the schools, because if we have 2 separate ways of doing it, like, are we telling kids that can afford to do some program through Lewis, like, you can get, your bike's going to be approved sooner than a kid who might have to wait to go through the public schools. And if the vast majority of kids riding dangerously are from out of town, then what are we doing? Like, if that's, what are we addressing here? And I'm just concerned about creating, like.
Penny had a thought.
When you were talking about education programs and Lewis, if you Google education programs for e-bikes, there are several programs that have already been developed. And so that could be incorporated into your rules that, that kids are developing. And I would also suggest that once you have a set of rules, that it be incorporated into the student book, which is actually something that every kid is supposed to have read. It's in black and white, so they know what the rules are. And every parent should be encouraged to read the handbook so that they know what the kids are expected, behaviors. But you can get programs right online.
When we first started talking about Lewis School of Driving, it was only to think about presenting alternatives. If the schools are going to have a mandatory education process, then I don't think we need to get involved with this. But I don't know if Brian, if the schools are interested in, that's why the agenda raises the question, should safety education be mandatory? I'm assuming that whatever we do, we're going to have safety education. And I think we all take that very seriously. But if it's mandatory, my question is, would the schools want to be involved in something that's mandatory? In other words, if it resulted in a certificate or whatever, and we required by law that people had an education certificate, is that something you'd want to be involved in, given the fact that you're not involved in driver's ed, right?
Right. I'd have to learn more about what that may look like. Certainly, we have the kids at the school, so the space is there. At the high school, we do a safe driving week every year in March. And so we could certainly do something, some kind of programming, something around the middle school that would make sense there. But if somebody's absent, then, or, students doesn't participate, that would be more general. To get more specific than that, we could again use space, but it would be in cooperation with somebody else. And that may very well be our SROs. Matt is, all the kids know Matt. They listen and respect him. So that could be something like that that's developed, but I want to be careful about sort of going too far down that road without having conversations and understanding exactly what you're thinking around the mandatory part.
When do you think you'd be ready to, when would your process be ready to chime in on this issue?
So within 12 months.
Next
Well,
fall?
the thing is the summer sort of breaks it up for us a little bit.
Right.
Where the kids doing the
Right.
work. But they are getting started now and they're going to pick it up in the fall. We had talked about even trying to pull some together to do something before we return in the fall so that there's some kind of outreach to kids and families. I do think I want to make sure we don't sort of forget about the component of this, of the driver's awareness of the e-bikes and that they're around and where they are. And, we need to educate the kids. And I think we need to raise the awareness of the adults that are driving the cars about the kids being around in e-bikes and what they are. So the students will help us with that too a little bit, I believe. So the plan, the sketch is for them to get something together prior to the return so that there's some communication that goes out about that, and then to have them sink their teeth into it again in the fall to see where we are and think about larger scale work.
Personally, I'd rather defer to your process for a while rather than have us jump ahead and try to invent something that later becomes redundant with what you want to do.
Yeah, my reaching out to Lewis School of Driving that's the only driver's education company that I know about.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to them about the possibility. I think having the schools develop something in relatively short order would be a great start. And if the schools think it makes sense to have a driver education component, there are places that have done it before. And
You
there are
just
other
refer them
places
to a
done with
site,
Lewis
yeah.
School of Driving. I do like the idea of registration and personally like the idea of mandatory training. But how we administer that is indeed a challenge.
Eric, do you think Lewis School of Driving would consider what Dr. Lutzy was just saying in incorporating something into the kids that they already have coming to get their driver's license to be aware of kids on e-bikes? Like that's, if they
That's a
adopted
great
that into
idea.
their
My
curriculum.
recollection
Like,
of
be
my
aware of the
driver's
road.
ed,
Yeah, that's a great idea.
which was with Chet Lewis, long before there was driving school, is that there is a small portion of driver education focused on being aware of two-wheeled vehicles.
Okay.
And I can tell you from personal experience, when I was in an accident with an automobile, the driver never saw me. And it's not because the driver was never aware of the fact that there are motorcycles and bicycles on the street. It's because the driver wasn't trained to look for two-wheeled vehicles.
Yeah.
And most of us as drivers, when we're getting driver education, are not trained to look for two-wheeled vehicles. We are trained to look for cars, trucks, four-wheeled vehicles.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd love to see more education about that, but I don't think that would be necessarily very effective.
I do this to bikers, like it's for me to know that I'm aware of them. Like if I see a motorcyclist, part of it is that I have limited sight, but I always give a sign because I want them to know that I see them, and then it reminds me that I have to.
Yeah.
So I do this to motorcycle. I just give them like a wave.
I think that's great, but the driver's ed, sorry, I think that's a great, the driver's ed does include actual driving, and there's lots of bikers around here. So there is a real awareness of like sharing the roads because there's a lot more bikers. But I kind of feel like we're on the line now because we're discussing this issue. Summer is coming up. And Tom, you said, you know, can you live with yourself if something happens? I think the education piece is great and wonderful. But I'm wondering if there's something we can do now, even if it's not an ordinance, something like voluntary registration, or something that, you know, a kid would come in with the parents and have emergency contacts that would be in a computer somewhere. So if God forbid something happened, there would be contacts and maybe like a one-sheet piece of paper that someone could develop and say, these are the rules we'd like you to follow. I mean, I just feel like the whole summer, that's really when the kids, especially that middle school population, they don't have jobs usually. They're maybe not in camp. And that's when you see them all riding around and swarming the town. So I kind of feel like the fact that we have brought it up and not doing anything for the whole summer makes me uncomfortable.
I think in my mind, there's a difference between, as there is with automobiles, a difference between a driver's license, which directly focuses on safety, rules of the road, and a registration, which is more of an ownership concept, you know, to sort of create a database. And I'll comment on creating a database. The chief has commented that there may only be 15 problem cases out there, and he knows them all. You know, so for us to create a database where people would call like the police department and say, you know, cop calls the police department and say, do you have registration for so-and-so? You know, that's not a trivial process. If we nail the licensing part of it, the safety education, I'm not sure registration plays a major role in this because it would be onerous to administer.
So not to put a monkey wrench into this whole discussion, but I'm just thinking back to our last conversation. But if what the chief is saying that there's sort of like 15 of the same bad apples, and like so basically like assuming like the majority of parents in New Canaan, you know, buy this for their children, are pretty responsible about it, talk to them about the rules, maybe sign them up for a class of how to do it, and you know, and junior follows them, or however. So you have these 15 bad apples. I think then it gets back to what we discussed the last time is maybe the thing we should be focused on that idea of like, does the ordinance or the rule come up with is that if you don't have your helmet, if you're going down the wrong way or on the sidewalk or whatever, you're breaking the state law, we confiscate the bike. And then the second time there's a fine. I mean,
But chief already has those tools available.
do you have the punishments available?
Yes, and I'd have to maybe defer to Nick's expertise on this, but I believe the statute is written so that the way that I interpret it is we could potentially hold the parents accountable for the actions of the children that are riding the bikes. We haven't tested that, but with proper education and offering that to the students, you know, I think we have more ground to stand on that we can sit and hold the kids accountable that are those few bad actors to say, listen, we have this instructional program at the schools. We've made you aware of what the rules of the road are expected to be, and you're not adhering to them. Here's the punishment. So I don't know if Nick wants to chime in on if we can hold the parents accountable.
If we're using existing statutory remedies, I'd have to dig a little deeper into those statutes themselves. If we're contemplating an ordinance, the violation of which would then potentially the liability be borne by the parents. I'm not sure, I guess I'll say. For tonight's purposes, I need to just look at that a little more closely, but I'm not foreclosing it as a possibility. In some instances, that is the case. Just for the specifics we're talking about here, I would want to double check.
I think there is a line in the bicycle statutes that address something towards the parents or guardians of children. So I think something exists there. And I think it depends on, again, how you interpret it and how far you were able to take it. So
There's a possibility, Nick, that to create the parental liability, we might actually have to adopt an ordinance. So keep that in mind, you know, when you're doing the research. I think my impression, and I'm not sure how much this is black letter law, but there's a ruling from the Office of Legislative Counsel, or an opinion letter that says it's, as a practical matter, the way these things happen with middle school kids is that the citation is given to the parent. The parent is involved in this process by necessity because the kids are minors. And so it's not like the parent gets off scot-free, and they're probably going to have to dip into their wallets to pay the penalty anyway. I think you can build something on top of that, but I'm not sure if we want to have a culture of creating a safety conscious culture that everybody buys into, then I'm not sure we want the message from the town council to be that we're looking for more ways to penalize people.
Maria has her hand up for a while.
Maria?
I just noticed a year ago, it's on our town website. Deanna put it in her newsletter about the rules and the laws around e-bikes. And I think, you know, that's kind of a good idea to put that out again, not just through the town newsletter, but through the schools. Maybe Brian can forward it on. You have the biggest reach in the town with the families. And just another way to inform people. If you have a child that has a bike, or if you see a child on the e-bike, these are the things you should know. You know, I like how it spells out the laws that are attached to the e-bike and, you know, the rules of the road. So that was a year ago. I think we should do it again. And I think it might be good if it came out through the schools and the police department.
Greg has his hand.
I'm just
Greg?
gonna throw just a quick suggestion, sort of responding to Kim's sense of urgency this summer. Seems to me the retailers who sell these bikes have an opportunity to hand something to the purchasers, particularly the parents. So anyway, I don't know that they're all bought in New Canaan, but I'm sure a good number of them are. And so that's just one avenue.
I don't know that they are bought in New Canaan. You can get them on Amazon. And they get just delivered to your house. I was thinking along the same lines as what Kim was saying with summer coming. I'm just thinking of something that would appeal to like my kids' ages and these e-bikes, because they are really fun. Is there like something the SROs could do in an empty school parking lot one weekend and have all the kids bring their e-bikes and then do actual, like the kids that have them, and do a demonstration and just be like, look, there's a stop sign at Saks. Saks has a road, and then it has a parking lot, and and instead of it being like a lecture or a handout that, you know, it's like a real interactive. I mean, my kids would love to show off to an SRO what they could do on a bike. I don't know. It just.
That's something that could happen before the end of the school year. A one day, you know, Saturday e-bike day.
Yeah, maybe make it a riff on cars and carburetors, like bikes and, I don't know, something alliterative, but fun, like make it like a fun
Something like that could be fun. I don't want to have any terms of like.
Bikes and bagel things.
Like the grants, the program that you guys are developing for the school either. I'm just trying to think of something immediate that would be like fun for kids to participate in if it's a nice day and they're outside and they're going to be on their e-bikes anyway. Like invite them to Mead Park with the Apple Cart, and I don't know. It's just a thought.
I think that's a good idea. Maybe the PFA could help with that too.
Yeah.
The PTC.
Pay for the bagel.
Just
Yeah.
for reference, we did a few years ago, try to have what we call the bike rodeo type of thing
Mhm.
before the e-bikes and to educate and to give out free helmets and just sort of educate probably a little bit younger kids on how to ride bikes and whatnot. But we got very, very little
That's too bad.
interest in it, very, very little. So we could certainly explore with the SROs and what they can do before the end of the year. And I believe that Brian and the staff at Saks and Matt, the SRO, are working on things. I think Brian alluded to that. So, you know, I think they'll definitely get something out. What it will be, I think, is still in development.
Well, we're committed to another topic on the agenda, so I'm not going to assume that we need to resolve this all tonight. Seems like I'm guessing that people might want to do a little more thinking about it. And I don't think we're going to be able to come to a conclusion tonight anyway, so. But you know, all good ideas.
The only thing I hesitate, because I think you're right about that, but I also think, I feel like maybe we should try also, because we don't ever seem to get closer, like.
Well, there's two kinds of trying in my mind. If we wanted to try on an age restriction, we can basically make that decision, right? We're going to try an education. I think we need to defer to the schools, give them our input, and these are our best ideas, and we've given them some great ideas, but we can't really.
Tom, I
But the
also want to make
registration
you,
issue is also on the table. Sorry, go ahead.
I also want to make you aware that it's not just the kids that are in danger, but the pedestrians also.
Right.
And I think
And that's where the
that,
motorized thing comes in.
exactly, but I think we need to come to a consensus on something
Yeah,
and not let it hang another season.
I agree. Because we discussed this, I think, in November, and we spent over an hour talking about it. And now we spent another hour talking about it. I feel like it's worth coming up with some kind of plan.
Well, we're committed to talking about the rules of the town council. Mike Morrow made it very clear that we need to get to that tonight. So,
I mean, I'll throw it out there. Do we have a consensus on whether we would want to impose some sort of age limit? I mean, I'm not, I think I would be a no on that right now.
I'm a no on that. I'm more focused on the registration and the education. I like the idea of registration because it gives us a basis of making it serious, getting the parents to come to wherever they register, get the emergency contacts. And so then we get a sense of what is the age. It's a database of basically understanding, like, what is the age, what's the bike, where'd you get, whatever. So I think it's a good start.
Chief, would it be possible for you to write an article to the papers, just basically going over some of the basic rules that are in place in terms of a single person on a bike, the helmet requirement, obeying the laws of the road, and just putting something out there to kind of start the conversation? Because if you Google it, it says Connecticut's expecting the mortality rates on e-bikes to increase. I don't know how many there have been on this state so far. And also pedestrian accidents.
there's something on the town website written by Officer Nicole,
Yeah.
that already does all that. It's right there on the town website.
We
Explain.
put it out a number of times, like Maria said. Deanna put it out last year, and we put it out periodically, and we'll certainly do it again as the weather starts to get warmer, and we expect the bike ridership to increase. So we'll blast that out again through social media and our website and other town resources.
Have you done a podcast with Mike about it? Has he done that, the New Canaanite, that little podcast that he does?
I don't know if we covered this topic on it, but we can explore that too. I think we may have, but I'm not sure. I think Nicole may have been with him on that, but I can double check on that.
Getting back to Hillary, you asking like who favors an age restriction? I'd be in favor of seeing who favors registration, age restriction, and mandatory education, just so that we have some consensus before we move on to our next topic.
Well, it's not one or the other. But let me just say, well, we can take a straw poll on registration, but I would say this: I think it's irresponsible for us to vote on a registration requirement before we analyze what that would go into, what would go into that.
I'm talking about a straw poll.
What the cost would, no, but
I'm talking about a
well, we can
straw
take a
poll.
straw poll, but I'm saying that we shouldn't, I don't think we should seriously consider registration until we know what that means. So that's, I'm just saying, you know, so I would have to vote no in the straw poll because I don't know what I'm voting on it. I don't want to adopt something I have no idea how complex or, you know, onerous that would be, and we wouldn't be doing it. That would be other people at a cost.
I think it's pretty simple. I mean, the dogs get registration and you go into town hall with the baby's, you know, certificate, and they put you in a computer and then that's it. I mean, it takes 5 minutes and it's $5, but I'll defer to, you know, who's gonna be doing it, but I think it's just kicking the can down the road to wait to talk about this for another hour at another meeting, but
I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think everybody in the room and on the Zoom is of the opinion or of the conviction that an education program for e-bike riders is critical and essential.
Yeah.
And I think we can at least say the Bylaws and Ordinances Committee of Town Council is fully committed to moving forward with an e-bike education program in conjunction with the school system and the police department. And beyond that, we are also strongly considering age limitations for e-bike riders and registration for e-bike riders. But the education is our priority at this point, and we're moving forward, working with the schools and the police department to enact that as soon as possible.
Well said.
I think what's important about that is that I think that satisfies for many people in town, whether they are pedestrians who do complain about it all the time, even if it's a perception that there's a new problem in town and do we have eyes on it? I do think that for the optics to come out with a statement like that would be very productive.
People want us to quote unquote do something. Well, we can't stop, God forbid, a death from an e-bike. We can't stop that, but we can say that we have addressed it and we know what will move forward in limiting that possibility.
Do we ever do that? Like make a statement to the crowd, like what we're.
We can do it. It's a press release on a position.
We would have to. I don't think we've ever done that. We certainly could do it, but I think we should have something drafted that we could all look at.
Mike Dinan may call you and say, you know, I watched the recording because he'll probably watch this recording. He'll say, what have you guys done? And say, here's what we've done and here's what we're doing. And it's going to take some time, but we are well aware of the problem where we are moving forward. You know.
It can actually be incorporated into a police article in the newspaper when you're reviewing what the rules are now that it's springtime and everybody's going to be out riding around, and then have a paragraph that's a follow-on paragraph with that, you know, we're looking at it, we're aware of it, and, you know, moving forward with some support legislation.
Okay, we got to move on.
Okay.
We'll definitely consider that.
Thank everybody for signing TV.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
thank you for
Have a nice
coming.
weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in the
Maria,
parade. See you in the
stay.
Thank
parade.
you. Good night.
Good night.
Before we get into the rules
Yeah.
necessarily,
Yeah.
I just wanted to, and I don't know if this is a motion to add it to the agenda or not, so Penny and Tom, you correct me if I'm wrong. I just wanted to address the issue of the gas-powered leaf blowers. We've received a number of letters from residents who, you know, are complaining about the environmental impact of the gas-powered leaf blowers and the noise that is attendant to that in the summer, and that perhaps they're not as needed or necessary as you would for a leaf cleanup to do grass shavings, things like that. So we've heard from a number of residents, and there was an op-ed in the New Canaanite this week. And so I want to acknowledge that. I want to say that we have been looking at it. I think the last, where we left it off earlier, maybe a year ago or so, year and a half ago, was that we were hoping that maybe the Conservation Commission or Planet New Canaan would take it up to educate residents about it. What I would propose is that, I know Jen is really passionate about this subject. I know you're really passionate about this subject. I think we'll be meeting again in the near term as a Bylaws and Ordinances Committee. It's a weighty subject. And I was wondering, and I hate to put you two on the spot, if there was a way we could work together in a bipartisan way. Maybe you guys could chat about coming up with a proposal for us to address this issue, because I do think that there's a couple of sides to it. I think there's a noise complaint about it. I think there's an environmental and health complaint about it. But I also think there's an aspect where there are residents in town who do their own lawn work and might have a leaf blower. I have an electric one that I'm sure is quite loud, but my kids like to use it to clear off the trampoline and to clear off the driveway, which I'm happy for them. But does that bother my neighbors because of the noise and taking apart the environmental thing? So it would be really helpful as Tom and I are working through the rules and as we're looking at the code to get things that are like super outdated off of there and perhaps unconstitutional. If you'd be willing to take it up and to come up with a proposal that we could consider as the Bylaws and Ordinances Committee to get in front of town council, because I do think this is an issue that's building steam, and I think it should be looked at.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering if it would be helpful to hear from the public before
Yes.
doing that.
Well, and I didn't want to have a long discussion about it, which is
Yeah.
why I said, do I want to add it to the agenda tonight?
Yeah.
Because people haven't had notice. So we've heard from people who are very against the gas powered leaf blowers. We haven't really heard from a ton of people who don't want to have some sort of ban.
Mhm.
So we should give proper notice. But
So do you mean to invite them to an upcoming town council and public comments, or?
Yeah,
Public
because
hearing.
You could have your own meeting.
the last time we took it up, Linda Andros, who unfortunately is no longer with us on this earth, did the presentation. So,
Town council to?
no,
Oh, to the bylaws and
to the
ordinances,
bylaws and ordinances. And then I think we invited a landscaper to the meeting. Do you remember that? And then there was some other people. The man who wrote the article, John Sell, was there. So I guess I'm mixed about whether that should come from the public, the leader of this. I don't really feel like I can be an advocate for the issue, but I certainly would be willing if the appetite was there to work with Jen on something. But I mean, we did get 24 letters for, 2 against. But I guess I feel like I need a little bit more information, like you were saying, Tom, how much, momentum is there in the public for this? I'm not really sure. I mean, we got the letters and I want to respond to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, and I think we do. And I don't know the best way to do that. I was kind of
Yeah.
hoping that there would be.
Can I ask a question, like, just procedurally, and again, apologies for being like still relatively new as, the town council, the process of something like this, but it was always in the back of my mind, and I just didn't get to it from the time I started town council work. I was much more focused on budget, but was to sort of sit down with Conservation Commission. So for example, like I know Robin's stepping down, but I know that she had gotten a plastic bag ban passed, but like, so how that process went. And also I know like there's a lot of people on the Planet New Canaan who might have ideas and for a grassroots effort kind of thing. Are Kim and I allowed together to sit down and meet with them and kind of interview with them to get information about where they're at and what their ideas are? Or do you have to notice that, like as the two of us doing that? How does that work?
When Robin got the paper bag, plastic bag ban, she was a regular citizen coming before town council to ask for.
No. What I mean is like, just like Eric called up Lewis School of Driving, trying to get information. I'd love to work with Kim just to gather information and then maybe gather people to come to present in front of Bina. Are we allowed to do that work together without noticing it as?
FOIA requires that you noticed it.
Even if we sit down and meet to interview external
You're
people?
meeting together to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a FOIA-able thing where you have to notice, but.
Yeah.
Nothing to keep you from calling one person and her calling something,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
talking to each other over the phone.
We can say divide and conquer over the phone,
Yeah.
do the work and then have a meeting together. And that one is noticed. I just want to understand the process.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
that
As long
makes
as you
sense.
have a meeting together, that has to be noticed.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
But that was a question?
No, a statement.
Oh, was it? Oh, I see. You said whenever. I didn't hear it.
Okay,
I mean,
so
if you want to reach, like, it would be helpful to hear what the Conservation Commission's position on this is now. And it would be helpful to learn like what Planet New Canaan's and at present, I don't have the bandwidth to do that.
yeah,
and I don't think that
I'm
Tom and
excited
I
to do that.
should
I'm excited to do that.
have the
so,
obligation.
yeah.
And if it's something that you're particularly interested in, I say, take the ball and run with it. Like, I'd
I
say
think it would
go.
be helpful, and maybe you have this already, but I think it would be helpful when you're talking with people, they're gonna wanna know, well, what are you thinking of? You know, what's your proposal? Then we'll react to that.
Mhm.
So, and it doesn't have to be just one. You could say, well, we could do A, B, or C, one more aggressive than the other. And we haven't decided at all which one that would be, but
Exactly.
we'd like your reaction as to whether A, B, or C would make sense and be politically viable.
It was,
So to do that, we would have to be in a public meeting to come up with those ideas. Is
Mhm.
that what we're talking about? So we would publicly discuss what the options are?
well,
I don't think that's
we might,
100% clear.
Oh, okay.
I think we
guess
could do
lost
some,
Nick, didn't we?
Yeah,
I think we could do some separate research, like, you know, you have. your
email
lead-
research.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the liaison with the Conservation Commission, so once there's a new Conservation Commissioner and, you know, I can go to those meetings, anybody can do those or notice to the public.
Mhm.
And maybe get that as an agenda item just to discuss, but then when we have different moving parts, we can bring them together to a B and O
Or,
meeting.
yeah, or separately, like.
Or publicly in
yeah,
a meeting. you said.
Or a meeting.
So it would be a subcommittee of the Bylaws and Ordinances Committee?
Yeah.
Oh, because so it's a formal committee. That's why we could call our own meetings. Is
Okay,
that?
What was the last?
Subcommittees are foiable,
that's okay.
Yeah.
having been taken to.
No,
No, I just said,
I just,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
no, I know that it's, subcommittee would be public, but I'm, you want to form a subcommittee is what I'm asking,
Yeah.
of
Well,
bylaws and ordinances.
but
That's
maybe-
what
And
I'm-
the minute you do that, it becomes a subcommittee of the committee and all the rules and regulations for FOIA play.
Yeah, so maybe it's smarter not to form a formal subcommittee.
Then how do we call a meeting without?
Well, you
Calling a meeting is different.
could anyway, but
Or
I think the
can we
question
do
is-
it under the guise of B and O, just have a.
I would just assume FOIA applies and
Yeah, I
follow
would
that
too.
rule, like whether you, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
you can, if, or one of you can take it, if you would like to take the ball on this
Yeah,
and
so-
say,
what were you gonna say? We could have a meeting and just notice it
As town council members?
as the
I
subcommittee,
just
as
don't know
the
what
GL.
the entity is that's calling the meeting. That's the only thing that I'm stuck on,
Committee,
unless it's.
the
the
Bylaws
ordinances-
and
bylaws and
ordinance.
ordinances. What?
well,
The bylaws and ordinance committee would be calling the meeting. And I
maybe
am
we can,
having the meeting with outsiders is part of the education process to the public. So I think that would make sense to do that.
Okay, so instead of us holding a meeting alone, if you can't make it, you can't make it, but it's the bylaws and
Yeah, I
ordinances
think that's
calling
probably
the meeting.
cleaner.
well, if you're
and we
gonna,
can-
if you're gonna have publicly noticed meetings, then there's no reason not to make you a subcommittee. I don't think you need to have all of us involved in the process from the start. You know, I don't think you,
I'm fine either way.
I think I have to think about it, but I appreciate the
Yeah.
idea and the.
And I just
discussion.
want to make one other point that we can keep in the back of my mind, but since we're in this publicly noticed meeting, we can just get it out there. Yeah, exactly. That I was just thinking about this on the way after reading your emails and dwelling on this, which is, we also need to take in consideration, just listening to the chief right now. But so then if we were to come up with, said ordinances or any kind of regulations, then like, who's going to actually monitor it? Like, what are we creating as a burden in the sense of like the plastic?
no, I think you should keep that in, and I think that should be top of mind as you come up with a proposal.
Right,
is
because
how
are
we-
like citizens going to be reporting other citizens, like,
Yeah,
we,
no,
a
these
plastic.
are all things that you would need to.
Yeah.
That we're asking you all
Right, I
to
was just putting
consider
it
and
out there.
propose, like
there are
that.
a million issues. This is just one. There are a
Yeah,
million of
yeah,
them.
yeah.
The police don't want to enforce this.
Yeah.
So there's a number of things to get through, but you got to start somewhere.
Right.
And so start.
Start.
We'll give you some background stuff to read. Greenwich has put out tomes of background in their process. So.
Sorry to have.
No, thanks for
anyway,
bringing it up.
I just wanted to bring that up so that it's.
So on the agenda, what we have rules of town council. So what happened is Christina proposed a set of changes. And then because they're studious members of the town council, Eric did a red line and Hillary did a red line and I looked through it all. So it's like, I thought it would be very easy it would simplify the process greatly if we could talk about these 6 issues conceptually and then put a red line together based on this discussion, rather than going through word by word, line by line tonight.
Where's all the red lines that Eric created or Hillary created?
I sent them to you. I sent mine to you,
How long ago?
months ago.
Yeah.
Well, we
You
can
and I
send
were
those.
probably working off the same document and then one of us edited, I think you edited first, and then I added edits to it, and then I think that was probably on the tablets that then Eric redline, I mean, it was
A lot of red lines.
at the
Well,
last town council meeting where it was discussed, there were several drafts that different people seem to have that were not uniform.
But please,
So-
let's not try to litigate this question. Let's try to make some progress tonight, and then tomorrow we can get you all, every document you want. But we can't give it to you now. You wouldn't be able to read them all now. We got to
That
accomplish
is,
something.
that is fine. So how do you want to proceed?
I got it right here. It's in the agenda.
Oh, you just want to go by the question?
Yeah. I want to get an answer to these questions from everybody in the room.
But getting an answer to any questions, how does that reflect on a draft that's amended?
Once we get the answers, then we write the document. We write the red line version based on your answers tonight.
Well,
So my understanding was that the draft that I did, you had some issues, specific issues with some of the contents. And you wanted to go over them and review them and discuss them. So you're scrapping the whole thing and starting.
No, we would look at your document when we go to prepare a single merged document for the committee to consider in the future. We could absolutely look at your document. But what happened in the meeting is that Mike referred this to the Bylaws and Ordinances Committee. So we're gonna have a different process than I think the one you envisioned. I think you envisioned going through this in a town council meeting. Mike said, no, that's not gonna work. Put it through Bylaws and Ordinances. You know, we're the co-chairs of the Bylaws and Ordinances Committee. We want to start with the concepts before we get to the drafts. That's what we're gonna do.
But you're deciding what the concepts are. And
No.
you're limiting them.
No, it says among them.
Okay.
Well, I'm certainly not limiting them, and when we get together to talk about the drafts, you're free to suggest, you know, you'll have the drafts before we meet, and you'll be able to comment it, and you'll be able to say, when we get together to discuss this, I'd like to put back X and Y and Z. I mean, we're not gonna limit your ability to make suggestions. It's just that this process starts with the concepts, and that's a lot more comfortable, you know, for me to move a process along. It doesn't stifle you. It doesn't keep you from making your suggestions in the future. But I want to get a draft that I think fairly reflects the input that I've had from everybody. And then we have a single draft to work from. And if we just work from your draft, then it wouldn't have the input of the other people in it. So I want to get a consolidated draft.
Okay, go at it.
All right. So I'm gonna work from what's right now on the town website, in the town council section, rules of town council.
Can we start with section 4 really quickly? Because I think that escaped everybody.
At each biennial election.
Yeah, at each biennial election, 6 members shall be. Then there's the second sentence, which says at any election of members of the council, not more than 4 members of the same political party shall be elected for the same term. That's not in the charter, and
Yeah, it is.
it's
Which
not.
one?
Section
Right
4.
now that we talked about this last night, the charter says, are you talking about how many people, voters can vote for?
No,
No.
I'm talking
Oh.
about how many people from one party can be elected in a single election. Section 4 on page 1 of the town council rules.
I wish you told me this, and we could put a list together where people are gonna start walking out of the room in 20 minutes, I'm sure.
will.
So it says
Sorry.
not more than 4, so
And for the
is there,
duration.
is
You
there,
s- oh,
could
you were
there
talking
be
about
5
section 4?
members?
You're talking about section 4?
At each
Yeah.
biennial election, 6
That has
members
to
of
do
the
with
council.
board ethics.
No, section
I
4,
thought we
article.
were talking about the bulleted items in the agenda.
We are, right, so I'm referring to the actual rules of the town council when you said section 4.
Oh,
Yeah,
Sorry.
she's looking at section 4. It says
Article 1,
at
section
each
4.
biennial election, this is not on the agenda. This is a new item that you're adding, correct?
Can we make this last?
I don't understand.
Okay,
If we don't get to
fine.
something, I'd like to do the
Okay,
things
fine.
that were noticed.
I'm on the 2002
Yes.
rules
that's
of
what
the
I
town
have.
council that were on the website, and Tom
22.
forwarded them today. And there's section 1, 2, 3, 4. And Hillary
Article
was.
1, 2, 3,
Article-
Article 1, 2, 3, 4, Article 1, Section 4 is what I'm talking about.
Right, but they're
Article
grouped by
1.
sections. The ones that I'm looking at, the ones that I got off of the town website.
Never mind. Let's follow we'll go back to it at the end. It's literally the 4th section under Article 1 on the first page.
Yeah, I was just confused. I didn't realize it's Article 1 that you were talking.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
neither.
yes, I see Article 1, yes.
Okay,
I see
got it.
Mhm.
So, Article 1, Section 15. This is a pretty minor point, but it says when we choose, when we consider nominees for the Board of Finance,
Mhm.
it says we will interview them at a regular meeting of the town council. We don't, as a matter of practice right now, we do not interview all the candidates for the Board of Finance in open town council meetings. So do we want to leave this and change our practice, or do we want to loosen up on the rule and let the practice continue as it is?
I thought we always have the option to interview.
You have the option.
I know, but this doesn't give you the option.
It has seemed very performative in the 2 sessions. I've been through 2 cycles, like it seems like a fait accompli. And you always do a great job saying, I'd like to meet them first, but it does seem, is that what you mean? Like it?
No, well, if you followed the rule, and we actually had them there and interviewed them live,
Mhm.
then your problem will be solved. Then we'd have total transparency. But we don't do that in practice. And so we either change the practice and be more rigorous and require them to come into a meeting and be interviewed live in a full town council meeting, or we continue our more relaxed approach and change the rule.
Mhm.
Which do you prefer?
Actually, what we used to do is the general government committee would interview the candidate so that if there were background issues on the candidate that the members of the town council knew about, that perhaps the Board of Finance people didn't. I think what we were trying to avoid was having the candidate come to us and this is a fait accompli, this is who we want, and we didn't have a decision. So then why make us a decision maker if we don't have a process for that, vetting them?
It would have to be an executive session, number one. And then it would have to be another meeting, probably with the town council after the governance committee.
Right.
I think it's too
was-
cumbersome. The reality is that each one of us has a different schedule and would make an appointment to speak to the candidate if you don't know them.
I think that's what I've done is you get the resume and then you can reach out to the person. And then if there's a consensus that there's an issue, we have the option to speak to the person in the meeting. So I like that option, but I don't think this says that we always have to do it.
It
So I
does,
think
it
if
does.
if
It
we
says
take it out-
nominees shall be interviewed at a regular meeting of the town council, period. That's not ambiguous. If
No,
we
but
don't
what
want to
if-
do it that way, let's delete the provision. It's simple.
What I would like
What
to
is the
avoid.
definition of an interview? I mean, we get the resume, we call if we want to talk to them.
No,
and-
Maria, it says
at a regular
Interviewed-
meeting of the
No,
town
but
council.
we also, they come to the town council meeting and we can ask questions. So I guess that's my point. What is the definition of an interview?
no, that's not the point. The point is, are we going to require that we interview them at the town council meeting? It's not relevant whether we do interviews separate from the town council meeting. We're not doing this right now, and perhaps we should strike the provision.
I
Right.
don't-
Right,
we should
currently, we
start-
really aren't interviewing them. We're like, nice to meet you. and
Well, they
we're-
don't,
Yeah.
some of them don't even show up.
But I think we
Exactly.
should start doing it. I think if
we
it's
should
in the,
start
if
doing
it's
it
in
and
the,
follow
I think this is a great wake-up call. If it's in the rules, it's a very important position. It's an appointed position. It can last for how many years? They're appointed for 4 years. I think this is a good like reset to say we should start doing it in a very polite and collegial way. And
But
I opt for leaving it in.
I would add to executive session because you don't want.
But we wouldn't have to put that in here.
No? Okay, we can do it.
You
at
could
the
still
meeting.
do it
Okay.
in executive session.
Okay.
Sorry, why would it need to be an exec? That's just curious.
She's talking about,
Personnel matters.
Personnel,
we
Even though
could,
they're not paid?
we could do
They're
it
not
under
paid
FOIA
employees.
in
They're
an
not.
executive
you can go
session.
into
You don't have to,
personnel.
right? No, you don't
You
have
can
to.
go
unless
into
you-
executive session because it's a personnel.
Right.
But what, how are they?
What I would like to have some consideration is the opportunity for a candidate to be rejected and the embarrassment of that.
That's
That we need to get that cleared off. I mean, we had one a couple of years ago, which stings the candidate and doesn't make us look good, shall I say. And so let's do whatever we have to do to avoid that ever happening again.
How can we avoid that? If we
Exactly.
leave the rule as such and we go more rigorously to interview them, how could we avoid what you're suggesting?
The candidate was told off the record personally by different people that they would get their vote. And then when he came before the meeting, the vote wasn't sufficient and it didn't pass.
Well,
So
the
you want to
problem-
Right, but if we have the
Problem with
ability
that
to
is-
interview,
He still wouldn't have
The
known.
problem with that is those who told him or her that he'd get the vote were being irresponsible.
Yes, correct.
And
You
then
can't
that's, you know,
legislate against
you
that.
can't legislate against people being jerks.
No, but we
Okay.
can do it in executive session and protect ourselves from happening in
Well-
public.
So here's the question. The same rules apply to us appointing Board of Finance as to ethics, as to audit. And right now, we have sections 15 and 16, which seem to set forth a different set of rules for Board of Finance than for Board of Ethics and Audit. Audit and Board of Ethics don't require currently, under the current rules, that we interview them at a public meeting. Board of Finance does. So what's the
The
basis?
difference is that the audit committee and the ethics committee were appointed by the town council. The Board of Finance is appointed by the first selectman or the Board of Selectmen. That was the
The Board of
difference.
Selectmen shall submit, read the first sentences of 15 and 16. The Board of Selectmen shall submit to the town council nominees for the Board of Finance. That's 15. Section 16, the Board of Selectmen shall submit to the town council nominees for the audit committee and the ethics board.
When this was updated last time, it didn't correlate to the amendment in the charter. They're both now coming from the Board of Selectmen. But in the, I don't know, it's in the rules that it's the town council who they are reporting to, correct, Penny?
No, the charter says, it has it all in one paragraph about Board of Finance, ethics and
Okay,
audit.
so we can
So-
combine it.
Well, my question is, are we gonna then interview everybody in a public meeting for all three boards? Or are we, like, right now, these two are inconsistent, so we need to
Mhm.
decide which approach we wanna take.
Mhm.
Right?
Right,
What,
yeah, no,
what
that
does the
makes sense.
charter say about all three?
On or promptly after the first day of December 2016, the selectmen shall appoint, subject to confirmation by an affirmative vote of 7 members of the town council, 2 members of the ethics board, 2 additional members of, hold on. The ethics, that's the ethics board. Oh, then maybe it isn't, 3 of them, but, oh yeah, because that's 14-6, which applies to the ethics board. And then in section 5 of the charter, it's the same language for the Board of Finance.
where is the ethics in this one?
What about the audit committee?
Going there right now.
Okay.
Sorry. It just seems like the appointment process is the same, so we should be consistent.
Well, it's different parts of the statute, or is it the code? It's the code that it's referencing.
Right, it's the charter.
I think
Yes.
that the first question we should ask is, what do we think is the right thing to do?
Yeah.
And then we could figure out where to put it
I think the right thing to do is to make the process consistent
Yeah.
across all 3 boards.
Yeah.
and which process.
I do.
Whether to interview them at a regular meeting or to not.
I know, but that's my question.
Yeah.
Which of those do you prefer?
I prefer the interview because I think if the position is that important, the candidate ought to be willing and able to come to a town council meeting and be interviewed. Now, I would hope that the first selectman would never nominate someone whom he or she thought we would vote down. And I would hope the first selectman would have conversations with those on the town council where he or she thought that might happen
Hmm.
prior to sending somebody up the
No,
hill, as it
There's
were.
never.
I would like the process to be consistent as well as interview the person also.
Yeah,
And
that's where I am.
so I'm in.
So we'll leave that means we should make further changes, but we can do that later.
Yeah.
So we'll make all 3
Across audit,
conforming.
ethics, and finance.
We'll require the interview.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay.
And we really should interview them.
well,
You know,
I think
I mean, seriously, because every in my career, every Board of Finance person I've asked, what is their philosophy of taxation? For the Board of Finance.
We clearly
You
should
know,
interview them.
because I mean, I remember one candidate said, well, you know, we are dealing with a populace that actually can afford higher taxes. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. Are we going,
But the problem is,
you know?
if we're doing it in the full meeting and it's the meeting where we're gonna do the vote, it's extremely awkward to put somebody, ask them really difficult questions, because that implies that you'll then turn them down. And we're
Which
under
is why
pressure.
you wanted to have that separate interview by members of the general government.
But we can also talk to them on the phone with their resume.
could still
ask
do all
those-
that.
You can ask those questions. But my question is, what if someone doesn't come to the meeting? Because we've gotten into issues where they can't make it and we vote them anyway. Do we say like, it's mandatory that you attend a meeting or else we can't take the
We
vote?
postpone it and they have to come the next meeting.
Yeah.
Or
you can
that
call a
should be
special
no,
meeting.
because we have
It's
had
implied
several
here.
people not come and it doesn't get enforced and they get voted in anyway. So I just think that should be reiterated.
Right.
When a candidate's selected, if, in order to be voted in, you must attend a meeting. And if you can't, we'll postpone the vote until you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that would be consistent with leaving the language the way it is.
Can I just ask something, just kind of addressing what you're saying, just like see one pitfall of it, just that, so obviously the Board of Finance applies to the same rules by, you know, Connecticut statute of like the makeup, like the 2/3, like majority to minority
That's for
party.
every committee.
I understand that. So the questions that you're asking, I mean, you do understand that there will be people with a different like ideological point of view that, I mean, at some point, like when you're interviewing them, like the question that you just sort of posed, like, are you gonna reject them on that if they're from the minority party, you know, perhaps like it should be a look at their qualifications or whatnot. You're not gonna get uniformity of what you want out of every person that's put up.
I know where you're going.
Right, so it's
Well,
not
I
really
don't think-
controversial what I'm saying, I'm just saying like a matter.
That's why it's a majority vote, right? And I think I have confidence that we are unbiased and nonpartisan to be able to make.
Right,
that.
but we can't keep voting out, like if we're a majority R, you know.
I've never seen that happen. I think,
Right,
but I
we
understand
haven't,
your
we haven't been
point.
interviewing.
Well, but we can't,
Well,
but
we
to
do
be fair,
privately.
anybody could, we can reject anybody for any reason unless we start putting stuff in the rules about what we're supposed to review. So I don't know that we need to have this discussion
Right.
about it right now because you can ask it publicly or you can ask it privately, like, and
And Tom wants to move on.
Right,
Okay.
let's move on.
just along the same lines, we also have to, the town council is also responsible for appointing a council member to the Affordable Housing Committee. And I thought this might be a good place to add a section that addresses that with the same rules that, you know, maybe a separate section is.
We're gonna interview a town council member?
No, that we should, but we have to cover that we have to nominate a town council member to affordable housing.
Oh, sure, yeah, no, that,
I
Is
was
that not
just
currently-
gonna
I assumed
suggest-
that was
yeah.
obvious, so that's why I didn't put it on the list.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
But does that something really needs to go into the rules? Because we have these different appointed, they're almost task forces.
It's part of them.
Rather than official
Well, they don't,
committees.
maybe they
and-
wouldn't go in the charter, but come on, what's the harm?
Well, because there's a way of phrasing it, you know, that the town council, you know, approves or appoints or whatever members to Board of Selectmen, you know, appointed committees or developed committees or something. Because maybe we won't have an affordable housing one. Maybe we
Well,
won't have. a
let's take that up
utilities
in the
one
next
for a
meeting.
while.
Okay. that's
Next
fine.
meeting.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Robert Rules of Orders. So let me tell you what happened here. The issue, by the way, is there are people, experts, who say that you can't have, there's no such thing as a co-chair, because the rules should make very clear what each individual's responsibility is. You can't have two people with one job description. And so I saw a YouTube thing with a so-called expert who was expounding on why it's absolutely unacceptable under Robert's rules to have that concept in your bylaws. Having said that, in preparing for this meeting, I saw a lot of other sources that said, yeah, well, we worked it out. So I think all I'm saying here is that I don't think we have, since they put this together, I no longer think that they're clearly barred. But the question that's raised then is, can we be more specific about what the duties are?
I think you can put chair, co-chair, chair and secretary, because the other person takes the minutes.
You mean for the committees?
Yes.
Is everybody okay with that?
Because I
Vice
think that's
chair,
how it
secretary,
functions.
vice chair, finance.
Well, we're talking about committees.
No, aren't you talking about the
Let's talk about
chairs
committees.
of?
Can
of
you
the-
do chair and vice chair? for
On
every
the committee, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would take care of it.
Oh, instead of co-chair.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
I thought that's what it was. That's what I thought it was.
no, it's,
You know,
yeah,
like,
it's a little labored right now.
most of our committees have co-chairs.
And then the issue is, now let's talk about the vice chair role.
Mhm.
And maybe that's the one where we can, if you want, we can keep what we're doing now. We have 2 vice chairs. But just be very clear, and we're halfway there already. I think it already explains much of what the difference is. It's a little awkward because we say, I think it's who sits in for the chairman. It would be
Yeah.
the vice chair who represents the majority party. I think that's a little awkward, but it seems to work.
Well, that's by statute.
No,
Where is that article?
no, it happened when we,
Meetings?
I think when we,
Article 1, Section 7.
there's several places that it comes up.
It's also under meetings too, Article 1, Section 7.
I think what happened is that correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that every year we used to say the minority party gets to be secretary. And the minority party didn't feel that was very complimentary.
It got to a point where the minority party did not want the seat because they didn't want to take the minutes because that was.
Right. So we
So it
created a
changed.
title to make them feel better.
Yes, and then the minutes, because they did not want to take it, fell upon the other vice chair. And that's how Penny or I have done the minutes.
Well,
I never did the minutes because
you
George Morales
signed
did
them.
them.
So,
I signed them. No, they were done outside of the town council because the minutes needed to be taken by someone who's not listening
Can we
and
not get into
involved
that?
in the discussion.
I don't think we need to get into that right now. We're talking about the secretary. And if you want the secretary to be able to delegate, that's a different issue. But right now we have 2 vice chairs. And I think the question is, can we it would solve it if we said we have a vice chair finance, vice chair secretary. That would solve it. It's just that we need to clarify in cases where it would be, you see the term vice chair and you don't know which vice chair we're talking about.
Can we alternate the vice chair? Well, I guess the secretary thing doesn't matter. Okay, I see what you're saying. I just
Can you
think,
say
I think we
first,
tried to
second?
get rid of co.
Vice chairs.
Yeah, we tried to get rid of co in the other one, so to keep it consistent, can we try to get rid of co-vice chair in this, just to keep our
No,
momentum going with no co-chairs? We're having a chair, like, is there some way to do it that's
Yeah, he just said
equanimous
it,
to
to
everyone?
title them, vice chair finance, vice chair secretary.
I think there's 2 separate issues. There's the fact that town council as a body has 2 vice chairs, one from the minority party, who's me, vice chair finance, and one from the majority party, that's vice chair secretary. That's over here. The issue that I think Tom is talking about is that within the town council rules in the committee section, we talk about co-chairs.
Right.
No, we've
And
solved that.
We've already solved that, but
Yeah.
I'm saying I don't think we should
I'm
have
not
2 co-vice chairs.
Then it would have to.
But maybe we've solved it already. We don't currently refer to the vice chair finance right now in the language, so maybe that's all we have to do.
It's designated in the article.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we won't really change anything functionally. We'll just make sure they have separate titles.
So one title is vice chair finance and the other one is vice chair what?
Secretary.
Secretary.
Does it alternate amongst parties, or is it always a certain party has that?
How does that interfere or conflict with the finance chair?
Good question.
I think it's too confusing.
Yeah.
that's the way it has been since I've been on town council. That is the designation of the vice chairs.
What?
It's my understanding.
Finance, yes, but not at the top with the chair and the vice chairs. I just give it some more thought.
Yeah, can we do that? Let's,
Hold on, are we,
let's think
sorry,
about it.
are we talking about committees right now?
No.
Or is it
No.
the whole town council?
Just
No,
vice
just-
chair of the
just
town council.
You and Christina's role right now, but other people will take them in the future, yeah.
Well, I think this is a relevant question and I don't
Yeah.
want to let it go because there's a provision here that says in the event that two members are serving as co-vice chairs, which we are right now, the member belonging to the majority political party shall be considered vice chairman for the purposes of this section when the chair is not there.
Yeah,
That's not required by statute. It's not required by the code. It's not required by the charter. So why are we requiring that?
because the majority party still rules.
Well, but before we get to that, we
If
put
there
that
was only
language.
one vice chair on the town council, would it have to be from the minority party or could it be from the majority party? Could you have the chair and vice chair from both parties?
You could have,
Before
you could have just
it
majority.
was a vice chair from the majority party along with the chairman, and the minority party was the secretary.
but I don't think it's required.
Can you just have vice chair, majority party, vice chair, minority party, and then try to figure out that other section later?
Well, I don't think we're that, I think we can figure it out. I think there's a way to do it, to get rid of that language, but I don't think that the majority party in this case is going to be happy saying,
In the absence of.
giving up the fact that the vice chair who steps into the chairman's role is going to be from the majority party, but we don't have to talk about that here. Anyway, I'd want to give it some more thought. I think we've raised the issues.
Come up with a title because I know where you're going with that, you know, because
It just,
Not-
makes-
Yeah,
it makes
we're
it
on the
two
same
separate
page.
people and it makes
Yeah.
it consistent. And,
you're not
you know,
keeping it functional. I mean, within the three leaders of the town council, they can figure out
Yeah,
which
they can
ones.
figure it out, but we'll
That's
say
right.
one's majority, one's minority, and they're both vice chairs, and that distinguishes two different people.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, something like that,
But what, yeah,
close to that.
what is that? But what does it mean? And then who's designated secretary and who signs the minutes?
I want to come back to that. I want to work on it,
Yeah.
put it in the
Work on it,
draft, and then we
work
can
on it.
discuss it again.
Like even if you're not drafting the minutes, somebody has to sign. As the secretary. of the town.
Don't want to get into that tonight.
Mhm,
We're only 2 out of 6.
mhm.
Could be either, actually.
I think it should alternate
That's a.
Read
No.
title.
every other year.
Kathleen Corbett was the last one to take that position. After that, everybody else rejected it. So it is what it is. I just don't see.
Well, the fact that they rejected it shows that it's not mandatory. There's nothing in state law that requires
No, that's
the
why.
executive committee to be all, to have a minority representation, is there? Maybe there is. But anyway, we'll look into it. Okay, should members be prohibited from using their town council title? So Christina proposed this rule, and maybe she could give the rationale, because I come from a different place. What she's proposing is that members will be prohibited from using their town council title in any public media. And I'm saying, why wouldn't it be sufficient for the member to make clear that he or she is not speaking on behalf of the town council, or that they not imply or make that assertion that they're speaking for the town council? But anyway, Christina, why don't you give your thought on that?
Historically, it's been a contentious argument on town council over the years. And Penny, you can add to this, where people have written articles and the advertiser, for example, would add the title after the name of the person adamantly. And the chair would say, no, you can't do that because otherwise it implies that it's speaking for the entire town council. So there was a rule to not include the title if you're writing a personal column or a personal opinion in the paper. Even if you did an endorsement for a political individual, not to put the title because you're doing it as an individual, not within the office of the body that you're serving. That's the only reason.
Well,
So it's
you
not
say there
enough
was
to
a,
just
you say there was a rule, but not in the ordinances, not in the rules of the town council, there was no rule.
It wasn't written.
Right,
And when I was reviewing it, I thought I'd put it in and then we would
Right.
discuss it, whether to
Great.
stay in or out.
great.
Where are we? Which article?
Well, it's
isn't
not
in
in there
there.
right now. It would be Christina was proposing making it an ethical violation.
Not a
What-
violation,
what-
just to,
Well, it was in the section on ethics.
yeah,
As a matter of ethics,
yes.
that to me sounds like you're saying is unethical.
Yes, violation sounds like a ticket is being issued.
Are you talking about Article 4, board ethics? It was
Yeah.
gonna go in there?
I just feel like a lot of times, in the media that I follow, you'll hear an interview or read an opinion and it says, this person is expressing their own personal, not on behalf, they are the chair of Exxon, but they are speaking from personal, not on behalf of, so I personally live in that space more than an all-out rule, because if, God forbid, by mistakes, for example, a publication or something went ahead and did that, and I wasn't even aware of it, I wouldn't want to be tripped up as having violated the rules.
The issue is that when you're writing a column, or when you're writing an opinion, or you're writing an endorsement to a candidate, there's a limited amount of words, and you're trying to minimize the extra words. So that would be elimination, just putting your name, but not putting the
Are you
title.
sure, even just to say at the end, in parentheses, does
They
it
count
reflect?
Every word, including the quotations and every other symbol.
I still, just voicing my opinion, I would live
And
in
I'm
that
just going
space.
by history. I mean, if the town council doesn't want to put it in, that's,
I think the fundamental question is, if we have a very informed, well-educated, readership in the media, did they really think, like, for instance, when Jim Hines writes an article about international politics, that he's speaking for the Congress? Does anybody really think that? On the other hand, is it not a service to the readers to know that, oh yeah, this is Jim Hines,
Our congressperson.
our congressman?
These are his values.
It adds informational value to the reader. Shouldn't that trump concerns that we think our constituents are so stupid? They're gonna think Tom Butterworth represents the views of the
I think
entire.
I think you have to be careful.
So why isn't it careful to say, if I make the choice, I could make the choice. I could leave my name out, or I could say Tom Butterworth does not, these comments do not reflect.
Yeah, I
the
think
paper won't allow you to leave your name in.
Well, that's not our problem.
No, it won't allow you to leave your name out, but it certainly will allow you to say, these are my personal opinions and not those of the town council.
Yes. If
So
it's
the
an
writer
agreement.
makes that decision.
Yeah, and I think the writer ought to make that decision. And
But-
if I'm interviewed, I ought to make clear that I'm speaking on my own behalf and not as a member of town council. on
So
behalf
let's
of
say
the town.
if you were the treasurer of town council, would you then say, Eric Tunham, treasurer?
No, I
Town
wouldn't.
council?
That's what I'm
Okay,
saying. I
okay.
wouldn't.
Yeah, I've never signed a letter to the editor with my
Never.
title.
But I thought we were talking about making this a rule that you have to say something, because, right? I mean, you're saying you have to, if you write something to
No.
the newspaper, you have to say,
No.
this is my personal opinion.
No, you could leave off the
So
title.
what if I'm
But
interviewed?
that's already
What if I'm
happening, I thought.
interviewed
I don't see
and
anyone with
so-
the title.
what if I'm interviewed, by the advertiser, Mike Dinan, and it's something to do with like, it's an Earth Day event and I say my opinions, I mean, he's going to say Jennifer Zonas of town council, so,
You could ask him to not.
but I mean, I don't think
that's
that's
an opinion.
realistic. I mean, I am a town council member in the town. I'm not speaking on behalf. I'm not saying,
Well, let's take a different situation. Let's say one of his questions is, are you currently on the town council? What are you supposed to say?
Yeah,
Yes, I am.
yes, you are.
And he can report that. We
So
can't-
are
we
you,
can't
wait a minute,
regulate.
maybe I'm missing the point. So you're just worried about identifying whether you're treasurer or chair, or are you worried about me saying I'm on the town council?
Yes.
Exactly. It's not my worry. It's been an issue in the past that's come up many times.
So then how does this not create a problem when he asked me if I'm on the town council?
Because that's a question that's being asked specifically. It's not an opinion. You can say whatever you want, but depending on
Well,
your
whether I'm on town
answer-
council is never an
But,
opinion. it's
but
a
it is
fact.
possible, I'm just playing this out. It is possible that any one of us could be interviewed for something and then identified as a town council member.
But that's fine. What I'm saying is when you're writing an opinion, so let's say it's on abortion, or let's say it's on, endorsing a candidate or burning a flag. That may be your opinion and it's your topic and it's your fight to fight, but it's not that of town council. So it would be, if it has been perceived as inappropriate to say Jennifer Zonas, town council member.
So can I ask, what is the proposed rule that should go in to alleviate or ameliorate this problem? What
So the
are we
proposal is,
proposing?
the proposal is that ethics provision would say that members of the town council would be prohibited from using their town council title in any public media. And that there's some more words around it.
Is there a
but
way
that-
we
that
could
is the
narrow it down
proposal.
to like opinion? No?
Personally speaking, this is how I feel about X, Y, and Z. That keeps the town council right out.
Why,
Another example would, see, when we get involved in freedom of expression.
Yeah, I'm just trying to protect myself.
I'm like, we're having all these little, we should do a little bit of this and a little over here, and a little over here. Wait a minute, why don't we have a concept here? Which is based on the assumption that readers are intelligent and they're not going to assume that we're representing the town council. And if you're,
I think it can go both ways, Tom.
if you're, I can come up with all kinds of examples. Another one would be, let's say that I want to write an article about, that I think we did an exemplary job regulating e-bikes. And in town council meetings, we did this and the other thing. So I'm identifying myself as being on the town council, and that would not be allowed?
What about,
Or how
You
would,
just wrote an article or an opinion, either in the paper about how the vote would come out on the Board of Ed budget. And I don't recall
I didn't put, it's
whether
my
you
title.
put, I think
didn't.
you just put Tom Butterworth.
Right.
Yeah.
But you were writing it in the third person.
Mhm.
So I just thought it was odd the way you approached it, because it was a little bit of poking at the audience as to what would the town council do, given that you're sitting on town council.
Yeah,
So,
But so would your rule bar that kind of thing
no,
from happening?
no,
Yeah.
he's entitled to say whatever. It's good that you didn't say town council member, because it wasn't the opinion of town council, and it would have contradicted what you were saying.
I'm wondering if one way to solve this is just to have a disclaimer that whenever we write to the media, we say, I am not representing the town council. These are my personal opinions.
Sure.
I mean, I also think, like, I personally do it when I'm just writing as a parent, like when I write to the Board of Ed. Because sometimes
Yeah.
if that gets posted, if
Exactly.
it's like a public thing, then I don't want anyone to say that I'm exerting my influence as a town council
Right.
member and writing to them.
wait a minute,
So
how
I
about
don't-
this?
Hold on, I'm not done.
So you
So
say,
I say, the first line I say is, I am writing this in my capacity as a parent of an NCPS student and not as a member of town council.
Yes,
I think
that's
that's
Like,
great.
and that's what I
Great.
say, but
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
what if we said,
personally.
Yeah.
just to carry that over to the other parts of the discussion, what if we were to say, if you use your title, you have to have the disclaimer?
Yes.
I think that's a double negative. I think it's better to be proactive in the sense that readers are intelligent, but it also is a boundary issue. Because everyone knows most people know who the 12 people are. And given that not everyone else was writing an article, there weren't 11 other editorials. And that's your right and freedom to do that. And I think that's great that you did that. But I think it is important to set that boundary for the reader. To say, this is my personal opinion and I do not represent the rest of my colleague or whatever you put in. I think a
Maria
disclaimer
has
is
her-
good.
Maria has her hand up.
Oh.
I was going to say, I think it's the right thing is to say, although I'm a member of the town council, these
Right.
reflect my personal views. Because I also think it's important for the readers to know that you are a member in case they want to.
Exactly.
I mean, that's your constituent that might reach out to you and share their insight. So
Okay,
I just think say it every time. I mean, unless you're writing,
I think that disclaimer is sensible.
Mhm.
And I would also say you're prohibited from signing the letter as Joe Blow Town Council.
Right.
Fair enough, yeah.
And
it's a
also,
good
if you're speaking
compromise.
in a public forum, I think it should be any place you're communicating, not just in writing. If you go to speak somewhere, a pro con or
Because if you
something.
say, this is only my opinion as a citizen, not as town council, and then you sign it, Eric Tudum, town council, that kind
There you go.
of slaps in the face what you put at the front.
But the other question is my concern about not wanting to look like I'm influencing, am I signaling to people who don't know that I'm a member of town council by including the disclaimer? But that's just me being silly.
But to Maria's point,
Yeah.
that, you know, you're engaging with the public, I don't know.
Let's see,
Okay, let's see.
let's see what
You
we can
are
do.
a member, so I think that's okay to
I'm
signal.
I'm kind of with you on that, to have a disclaimer, but it's like, that's who we are.
All right, we'll
Um,
draft something.
Okay, the next one, is there a need to create a new charter review committee of the town council? I think everybody knows the background of this question.
What do you mean new? Charter Review Committee, what's new?
The committee
Every-
itself.
We don't have one yet.
Every-
We don't have one. We don't have.
Right.
That's what new means. We don't have one yet.
No, what I mean is, you're saying a new committee. Right now, the committee, there is a committee format. There's nobody appointed to it, and it's only every 10 years that it wakes up and does
It's
something.
not a committee of town council. It's a separate commission
Okay,
formed by town council.
Christina, I think the question, I thought you had proposed creating a new town council committee that would be charged with,
An
Forming the
official
commission.
town council committee,
I thought that you had proposed
so
that.
named.
I had proposed that it either be the entire town council or the chairs of all the committees, which then comprises all the town council, to discuss the charter prior to assigning it to a committee that we would later appoint.
Isn't that what we do?
That's what the charter says we're supposed to do.
But so we could
Yeah.
also not have a committee at all, and just as the town council choose the commission.
That's what we do.
Right, but what I was trying to do was include everybody, because everybody who's involved in a committee has a different level of exposure than others. You would have more exposure on the Board of Ed, and I would have more exposure on infrastructure. And vice versa, and other things that would affect how the charter works. What it does is allows you to see the inner workings politically and the moving around of how do you get things done that you may want to incorporate in the charter to facilitate or streamline or correct something.
I'm confused.
Okay.
Is this in addition, so the way it currently works now is that the entire town council nominates people for the charter commission, no more than two of whom are elected officials,
Mhm.
right?
Most likely
So,
town council.
hold on a second. So what is
Before that step, it has been discussed within the town council what to do and if we open the charter
right,
and the pros and cons and
But
some
we're-
of the
We
topics.
just did that last night.
we do that.
No,
Why
we
do we need a
didn't do
separate
it
committee
last
to do it?
night. We brought in the previous committee members to discuss what they did in the process. We, as a town council, did not.
But my
discuss that.
understanding was from Mike was that we are going to, like, that was the first step, and then we
Yes,
as a whole town
yes.
council are going to do it. Like,
Yes, we're gonna discuss it and then decide whether we move forward the committee.
so my preference would be just to do it as an entire body and not like a smaller committee.
Right, and what I wanted was the entire body and not a smaller committee.
Where is it in the rules
It's not,
exactly?
it's not.
It's nowhere. in
It's
the
a brand new
rules. It's
proposal.
only in the charter.
That's what I'm,
Who gives us the
This
authority?
concept is nowhere right now, not in the charter or anywhere. Oh, you mean,
Yes, it is.
The state statute does.
the state.
Okay.
statute says that
State-
the leg- that
I'm
the
just
town
trying to see
legislative
what
body-
the wording, how.
The
it would make-
legislative body
Okay,
decides that it is time to have a charter commission and appoints the members to be on that commission, at which point they step back.
but it
okay.
doesn't say that we
there's
need a town council committee to do
No,
that.
no, it
That's
says.
the issue.
no, it
That's what I'm
says
trying to figure out.
That's the issue.
What was
Well,
proposed for the, I
body.
know, yes. What were you proposing to include in the rules as far as a new committee?
The committee should be composed of everybody on town council.
Why do we need that?
Why do we need a committee?
Because I didn't want it to just be within a subcommittee of the town council to be discussed whether or not we would do it. Wasn't it done that way in the
No.
past?
No, it's the legislative body that does the discussing and appointing.
No,
The
no, no.
legislative body.
So you're saying the chairman and the vice chairs decide whether or not the chart is going to be
No,
open?
the whole-
The entire, all of us
Yes,
are
but
gonna
I
vote.
want to make sure. You mean,
The whole council did.
okay, so that's what I wanted to put in there, is that everybody within the town council would be involved in it.
By
It's going
state
to be-
statute it is.
Yeah,
By
that's,
state
the
statute,
state
that's-
statute
that's
requires
required.
that.
But Article 2, number 1 says Bylaws and Ordinance Committee, and it says the charter review shall be a subcommittee of the Bylaws and Ordinance Committee and
Yeah.
shall have the responsibility to periodically review the provisions of the town charter and code, and it goes on.
Okay.
So right now,
It's
the
just
charter
within this
review is a
committee.
subcommittee of this committee. So what, if I'm not mistaken, if I understand, you were proposing that it should be not a subcommittee of bylaws and ordinances.
Right,
You want it to be the entire town council.
exactly.
So that would need to
Where
be
are you
changed.
reading what you're-
Here,
Article
You-
2, number 1. where it
you're
says-
reading the red line.
Okay.
Well, go on to the rules from 2002 that Tom sent around. That
2020.
the
Okay, then
the
maybe.
2022,
the
thank you,
proposal is
Eric.
to strike that,
So it's page
Yes.
number
Yeah.
3,
not create a new committee.
number 1.
No, it's just to clarify that it's the entire town council that discusses it.
So that verbiage would need to be changed. You're proposing to change where it says the Charter Review Committee shall be a subcommittee. You want to say the Charter Review shall be decided by the entire town council or
Yes,
something to that
Yes,
effect.
yes.
Okay, so that's where I was trying to understand where we're going with this.
Okay.
And if you want to refer to the statutes, go right ahead because it tells you exactly how it's
Okay.
supposed to work.
And don't call it charter review committee in that, right?
Just say the Charter
Sorry,
Review.
that was my confusion. I thought you were proposing creating a new committee.
She's saying strike the subcommittee
Yep.
Right,
part. Yeah.
right.
I mean, but just to be clear, even if this were to be retained, which I'm happy to take a look and strike it if we can't substitute this for what state law requires, which would still require this subcommittee to present it to the entire town council and then the town council to,
No,
like, we can't subvert.
Yes, you need to do it anyway. She's saying,
But anyway, this just creates an extra step.
she's just saying, get rid of that extra
Yes.
step and give it to the whole
That's what
town
I'm saying.
council.
We
Yeah.
can't
yeah.
Right.
bypass state law.
You can achieve the same thing by striking the existing language.
Right,
Yes,
exactly.
yes, exactly.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Done.
Next. Well, that's it.
I
about
had no
your
idea that was that simple.
Yeah,
Oh, we've got the
there we go.
last
See,
two.
that's why we talk about this stuff, guys.
Library board trustees.
God bless you.
Okay, so this is I'm gonna keep raising this until you get sick of it. You're already sick of it. But the one thing that we did discover is that, so 3 or 4 years ago, we set up a provision to nominate members of the library board. And I think that was in the context of,
There was a
Some
memorandum of understanding between the town and the library.
what's
And
that?
it's-
It was
Yeah,
a
it was in the
memorandum
MOU.
of us-
Yes.
Right, and it was based on the town council's, this wasn't the library's idea. This was our idea because we wanted to be sure we had some oversight, given the fact that we were coming up with $10 million and it was an important project. So I just want to let you know that, so that's what we did. We didn't, and it's funny, I asked Nick if he recalled, because he was involved in that. He might have written the MOU, I'm not sure. But no. Yeah.
Ask Nick.
Well, I take your point. It turns out there's a provision in our charter that says the library directors of the town of New Canaan shall not be elected by the electors of the town or be appointed by any officer or officers of the town. Now, I realize that is not necessarily inconsistent with what we did because it wasn't an officer that created the position. But it does reflect a philosophy in the town council that the library is separate. They have their own board and we're not nominating members to it. Now, we can keep doing what we're doing, but I'm saying that we had basically 3 years where we had these people sitting on the library board and they never said one word to the town council. We never asked them for their opinion. We never had them in. They got really upset at agreeing with the town council as a favor to go into these positions, and then we never utilize them.
Why is that?
Because, well, there are two reasons. One, we screwed up,
Yeah.
but one is there was never a critical function. You know, we never thought of them as a reason to get out of a bind.
Okay.
You know, and there's a good reason for that, because they're not equipped to come before the town council and make financial presentations or planning or strategy presentations on behalf of the library. You know, they're board members. They're not equipped to deal with that. And they can't be spies, because I think that was a little bit of the thought, well, maybe they'll watch out for things and bring them to our attention, but they can't do that because they're legally fiduciaries of the library, not of the town council. So
They sure are, and that's what happened. From the town side, we actually lost control of what we were trying to do, which is to have that liaisonship created, because it was a recommendation from the town council, these two people, to the board of the library, who accepted them and made them full trustees with all the responsibilities of being a trustee.
right.
Financially, service on subcommittees and so forth, with no necessary reporting back to the town
So
council.
let me add something to it. The first selectman has a seat on the board of trustees. What is that called?
Ex officio.
Ex officio. And our first selectman had not been to every single meeting, so there was a lack of communication.
Because he wasn't invited to the meetings.
Well, in order to compensate for that, and we were aware of it, was to take and have a representative or two appointed. And it was so contentious, the $10 million, because it was a lot of money, that we saw this as a way to keep ourselves informed and not rely on our first selectman that may or may not go. Now, the first selectman always had the privilege to appoint somebody in its place to attend the meetings, but they never did. And I don't think it was just Kevin, I think Malassi also. So the issue is, and Deanna wasn't attending, Deanna wasn't here then. So the issue is having two representatives there is limited the information we get, because my understanding is that they signed an NDA. And if they don't, the employees do. So there isn't an opportunity to get information out. But at least,
Point exactly.
but at least.
Is that confirmed?
Well,
I don't think that's true.
It is true.
The
It might
NDA.
not be for the board of trustees, but it certainly is for the employees.
Okay, but you put that on the board, you just said that the two town nominated board members signed NDAs.
No, I didn't say they signed. I said that the board of trustees may or may not have the NDAs. But I know that they're not going to be able to tell you what's going on the board, but at least it keeps us informed if a project is coming down the pike, if there is any issues that we need to be aware of. We didn't know about the library. Kevin knew about it, but the rest of us didn't know on town council the extent of which the planning had gone. And by the time that we learned about it, it was too late to hook it up to the gas line. It was too late to put the solar on the roof. All that got through because some of us pushed and pushed to get that, and it was only limited.
Okay, how does having two nominated members of the board of trustees fix a situation?
5
like
years
that?
after the building's been built.
Oh, there are other things that come up. There's the legacy building.
Yeah, but the
there's
NDA
ground.
is about the $10 million.
We're not talking about the inner workings. We're talking about having communication.
Okay, so
I'm not
years
in
ago,
We're liaisons.
years ago, under our general government
Yeah.
subcommittee, we had a liaison from that committee to the,
What Eric and I are.
Yeah, can I,
yeah, I was gonna say they do, and
And-
it was
and I think
Roger
the
Williams, and
relationship
he
between
went to the
Ellen
meetings.
Bravado and the library and the town council is infinitely better than it was a year or two ago. 'Cause-
Well, it might
'cause
be
we did this.
between you and Hillary, but we weren't invited to the meeting. We weren't even noticed.
It
But
was
she
public- it was
presented. I'm
publicly
sorry,
noticed. It
that's
was-
entirely
transparency.
untrue,
It
and
was
I,
publicly noticed.
Please do
and
not.
By
everybody-
the Board of Finance, you never noticed.
Because they called the meeting.
Okay.
please don't,
Chris
please.
Lippers called the meeting, he noticed it, it was recorded, viewable by anybody in town, including any town council member. What I'm saying, setting that aside,
Mhm.
I think the relationship between the library and the board of the library and town council is better than it was a year or two ago.
Yeah,
I'm not taking credit for that, I just think that's happened largely because of Ellen's approach to individual members of town council saying, I need to sit down and understand what we're
Yes.
doing right and what we're doing wrong.
Agreed. Lisa
and I
did not
think-
do that.
Yeah, and I think that relationship can only be strengthened going forward and to allow Hillary and me as the liaisons on the Finance and Government Committee of Town Council to work with Ellen going forward and have Ellen come and give us an update twice a year.
Well,
Would be really helpful.
I would like to go further than that in terms of the library. I would like to see a copy filed with the town of their tax returns annually. Because it would give us a better gauge as to
Well-
where they
Well-
are financially and other things that are never provided to the town.
Okay, so my question remains. What are we expecting of these two town nominated board members
They
that
don't even
cannot be
know what,
accomplished
they don't even
by
know what their
us?
job is.
Who have a duty of loyalty and a fiduciary duty to the library? That, you know, you
They
can have
have a-
dual loyalties under,
But the library agreed to that.
no, they agreed to accept
Can
nominations
can
from
I
the
phrase it in a
town.
different way?
Yeah.
In my opinion, I feel that getting the information that you're interested in is satisfied and is sufficient to have you two or whoever is the chair and vice chair of the government.
Finance and Government and Library,
I'm
yeah.
comfortable with that. I think the other two seem superfluous. I can't use the words, because I feel like the information you're talking about, the questions that the communication could be provided more effectively by the two.
So let me break the question up in two parts. Is the appointment of board members the issue or the reporting of those two board members to the town council the issue?
It's not an appointment, it's a nomination that
Nomination.
the board of
Yes.
trustees can reject.
Yes.
But like, they have no obligation necessarily to
Hey.
accept it. We have the authority to nominate.
Yes.
And then
So then
under the ordinance that we drafted or that
Yeah.
we adopted as town council, we imposed just a report. We said they can come before the town council biannually. Now, the question is.
Can I just interrupt? Is that an ordinance or the MOU?
There it is, in the ordinance.
Okay, sorry.
We copied it over in.
Actually, I don't know that
Partly.
we passed it as an ordinance. I think it was, no, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It was a
Bylaws.
resolution.
It's in our rules of town council.
yes.
So if you
That's where it
remember,
ended up, I
if
think.
you-
No, well, no, in fact, the language that's in the current rules of the town council does not match what we passed as a town council. So I mean, I've
I think
edited
that-
myself.
yeah,
to
yeah.
I
make
think
it
this is something that needs to be discussed between the town and the library now that it is an entity, you know, with a 2-year existence, and things have changed in the relationship between the two organizations. And at budget time, we decided that we were going to form a committee right after the town council budget was approved to look at the relationship, because one thing that needs to be decided is what is the responsibility of the taxpayer in supporting the operational budget of the library? Is it, I mean, it's gone all over the place. It started at about 60%, it's up to about 75%. And is this something that the taxpayers should be paying for? Or are there other ways that the library can be taking care of their own administrative funds and not depend on the taxpayer? So we've got to kind of work through this whole relationship now that it really is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Given the size of,
I might want to point
Yeah.
out that the trustees that we nominated have been to like 36 board meetings
Mhm.
and have served the library, participated in the governance process, and haven't shared one word with the town council. They've spent 0 time with us and 36 meetings with the library.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is if you need somebody as an intermediary to facilitate a discussion with the library,
actually, they,
ask Mark Dwelly.
But I-
He'll do it whether he's a trustee or not.
Tom, he was asked. I
I know,
asked
but
him,
you didn't
and
say-
and Doug Stewart
Did you ask them, would you help me with the understanding, of course, that you know, we'll continue to nominate people to the library
They
board.
were asked.
Why is that part of the
They were
discussion?
asked to chair a committee between the two entities.
Why couldn't you have asked them if they weren't on a library board? on the library
We
board.
could have, but it's just that they're looking for something to do, you
Yeah,
know, that
but-
would be beneficial to both sides.
When is their appointment up? Does anyone, I mean, maybe,
They were appointed 2 years ago when Steve Carl stepped down.
no,
it
but when
was-
is their appointment? stop?
The term, whatever term they're on in the library.
I wouldn't, I
think we're
wouldn't
moving
have
away
this
from answering
bump them
this.
off. I would just say that we're gonna no longer,
No, I know, but I'm just curious. I mean, to me, the MOU, the intent of the MOU was to have ongoing representation by two members that were appointed by the town council, not town council members, two members, and the line of credit hasn't been paid off yet. The building is brand new. So I don't think it's the time to,
Change it.
override the MOU. Maybe, they need more encouragement to get involved, and I don't know what they've been told as to why they're not. I mean, I'd be happy to talk to them. Why aren't they coming to our meetings? I mean, have they been invited?
But what are they gonna add?
Why?
I want to know what the value
I-
added.
I don't
is.
know what's the value added is during the whole evolution of the library process is, there were constituents and people in the town that felt like that was a lot of money to give. The parking lot is included, the center school parking lot,
We're
which
so
is
far.
huge value. There was a line of credit and, they wanted representation that's, not members of town council that are less biased, I guess, or representatives to the town to be coming to talk to us about what's going on at the library.
So I
By the
wasn't
way-
here when, the MOU was written. I wasn't here when this all started. But it seems to me the library is up and running, 2 years. I don't remember what the status of the line of credit is.
It's
It's
va-
still
it's
not
vastly
been paid off
reduced.
yet,
It's not,
but-
but it's.
But the
made progress.
intent of it was to have ongoing representatives.
So-
And so just because things have gotten better, that's great, but those
But-
people have not shown up.
But I think.
So I say we
Wait a
could
minute.
invite them and see how it
We haven't
goes.
had agenda items.
We haven't had agenda items, we haven't.
wait a minute, let me just point out that 14 months ago, when the library was presenting the budget presentation, Mark DeWhaley came to the meeting.
And
And
Mike
he,
never called.
Mike never acknowledged that he was in the room. So don't tell me they don't come to meetings. He came to a
No, I
meeting and he
never
was
said he's
shunned.
not coming to the meeting and I'm not running the meetings. I'm not in charge of it. But I think it's something that we need to work on rather than delete. It had,
Okay.
it had a very
Can Eric
serious
finish this point
intent.
too? You had a point.
What was I gonna say? The kind of information we seek from the library, they can't provide.
Why not?
Because we want to know what their budgets and their finance and their operating costs are. Mark and Doug don't make those decisions.
Well, it's not about making the decisions. It's just telling us what's going on. Like I give a
Well,
committee
By the same
report.
token, we
You
can,
give a
we
committee
can
Ask
have,
Ellen directly.
we can have Ellen Cravato, the CEO, who knows infinitely more about all that stuff that we want to know about. We can invite her to a town council. meeting.
In the past, when the director of the library would come before us, we would get nothing.
We would
Well-
would not get that
That's
information,
so-
no matter how hard
So
we
it's
tried.
always having my question is, how is having two board members solving that problem?
Well,
How is
one
nominating
of
two
them-
people,
One
period?
one of them is replacing the ex officio that it's the first selectman on the board.
No.
No, absolutely not. They are
No.
not a delegate of the first selectmen. They are
They're
board
bona fide
members that are
board
town nominated.
trustees.
It
I
had
think-
nothing,
Okay.
no first selectman had any input into who was nominated. Kevin did not, it was completely
Town council.
town council.
Can we take a vote on this?
I
Do we
don't,
need to
can
do
I say
more?
one thing? I don't think that we can override the MOU. I mean, the
Oh, yeah.
MOU.
Not necessarily.
Is there
I'm
a
not going
date of
to.
expiration? of the MOU?
Actually, we can. And every healthy organization, when they have established an operating document that is going forward, can step back and look at it and say, you know what, this isn't working. We were too harsh, we weren't harsh enough, we worded it incorrectly, whatever, and do a reevaluation of the relationship between the town and the library and come to an agreement, have another document that overrides the
Amends it.
original one.
So I asked
Legal
Nick asked him already, and he said as long as we get the library on board, we can do whatever we want.
So that's where the
so we
subcommittee's
clearly-
gonna come to
We
play.
clearly need to ask, if we were gonna take this out of, and basically saying, we're not gonna nominate any more of these guys, we would obviously first go to Ellen and say, okay, is the library on board with this? Will you agree for us to rescind this provision and effectively
Why would they
Change
say
it.
no? I'm sure they want it.
Well,
But
but
They
I
want
don't have
what?
to ask, they're a party to the
Oh.
MOU. We can't amend it without,
If
I'm
you're
talking
not
about,
understood-
I'm talking about us making a policy decision that we believe in, okay? And if you're saying there's technicalities, I agree. So our resolution would be subject to it being legal and, you know, that we honor the MOU and the rules of the town council according to our legal counsel.
So I
Yeah.
think
So we
that
wouldn't do it
Penny-
unless they sign on.
Right.
I think
But
that Penny's right.
You
Creating a
amend the
committee-
MOU.
Creating a committee to come to an agreement, and then maybe that will lead to an amendment to the MOU, but I wouldn't just take the board members out just because.
Okay, can we vote on that?
hold on, can I ask?
I'd like to
can I ask
suggest
a-
we take it to the town the whole town
Hold on,
council.
hold on, I don't.
The
we have-
rules are automatically
Why
going to
can't
the
we
town
do the
council.
vote?
And
Yeah,
To see where the vote lies.
guys, we're.
I
and-
think we take the whole thing to the town council. We can't, as a committee, modify an agreement. We modify.
No, we're not.
That's not what we're saying.
That's
We're,
not-
we're
We
voting
are.
on, we're voting on what should go in the draft proposal from the Bylaws and Ordinance Committee to the town council at large. That's what we're deciding. We're not ultimately making a legal judgment. We're just saying that Bylaws and Ordinance Committee is recommending to the town council to take out this provision. Town council can turn that around.
I don't even know if town council has, we're not signatories to the MOU. Kevin Moynihan signed the
No.
MOU as first selectman. So that is a threshold question that Nick would have to answer.
I know, that's what I just said. Whatever we say is contingent on, you know, the legalities being satisfied.
Which is the formation of
If
a
it's not
committee between
legal-
the two entities to discuss all of this.
Well, but just to be
Well,
clear
that's a
though.
different issue.
No,
I
but that's how it
actually
gets
don't think that
resolved.
the town council as a whole, and just to be clear, I didn't vote on the creation of another committee to liaise with the library. That was not decided during the budget process. That is not clear to me. That was proposed during the budget process. I happen to think that that the Finance and Government Subcommittee could do that. I don't know why we would create another committee to do this when there's a relationship already formed.
Well, that could be the committee. I mean, Penny just said to create a committee. That could be the committee that does
I know,
that.
I want to be very clear about things.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be said on the record that we've agreed as a body to create another committee.
Yeah.
I don't want it said on the record that board members of the library have signed NDAs. I don't want it on the record, some of these things that are being floated around that are inaccurate.
Mhm.
So I think that's, Tom is absolutely right. That's subject to whether I don't even know that we have a legal position to take this out of the MOU. If Deanna and Ellen decided to do it, they could probably do it on their own. But
Not without.
Oh, but, no, then we
Why?
approve it. We approve it.
Because of the money that we put out, that it was backing. The MOU is an agreement to the money that we gave to the library
Which we
and that we
approved.
loaned to the
it's already been
library.
approved. It's already done though. And
But it
the
hasn't been
MOU,
paid
But if
back
you're
yet.
amending
It's still
the MOU, it would
pending.
come back to us.
why? We didn't
Because-
sign it. We're not,
Doesn't matter. We are the legislative body. The
It was a-
first selectman can sign it, but not without our approval.
why?
Anyway, this is a
What's the
legal
basis for
issue.
that?
He
Can we just
doesn't
say
have the
that
power.
doing what I'm proposing would be subject to, you know, legal opinion from our town council, that it's appropriate.
From Nick.
And that covers all those issues.
I mean, if that's the case, I'd like to propose that there be a new committee formed on public-private partnerships. That would be a standing committee, that would be separate from all the other committees.
Not on the agenda.
Well,
can
we
take
could
that up.
vote on it.
We can take.
I could propose it as a vote. I mean, in other words,
We can also vote on
I
what you just
I
said
think
to
that
vote
we're
on.
all like engaged in the issue, and I think it's a contentious issue, and you could take a vote on it, but I think that the overall point is that the constituents in the town want unbiased as possible information from the library. So if I want to know about Exxon and I can take the CEO or chairman of the board, they're gonna tell me, buy my stock, it's great. So there's an element in here of trust and wanting the public to trust the information. And I'm not saying that other people that gave information that it's not trustworthy, but it is built in as a check and balance system into all the money that we give to the library, which is growing over time. So I think we need to keep that check and balance system as a commitment that we made to our constituents and residents.
These trustees have not provided one iota of checks and balances.
Okay,
They
but
have
don't
done
blame
nothing.
But I
them.
think
So I
that's
like-
I'm not
dysfunctional.
blaming them. I'm
Excuse me,
blaming.
excuse me,
we have-
I want to ask something, just also for the sake of time. So just like Kim could come out and just say, I want to propose a committee. You made a proposal and you're the chair of this committee, to have a vote. At the worst that happens, you vote against what he's proposing, but I have an opportunity to vote for it. Can we not, like, aren't you allowed to call the vote? It was
Yeah,
on the
let's do
agenda.
vote.
So now you have to make the proposal for what it
I
is.
propose that we eliminate the provisions relating to the appointment of library trustees that are currently in section 18 of the rules of the town council.
Did you want to say subject, does it have to be subject?
Oh,
to?
yeah, subject to legal opinion that that's an appropriate action.
In a full vote of the town council.
We don't have to say that
We
because
find out from the
that's
legal
implicit.
counsel.
We can't stop the town council from voting on our proposals. So
Okay, I vote in favor of that.
I
Wait,
need
you-
a second.
Oh, a second, sorry.
Okay,
Okay.
all in favor?
No, I don't think this is our place to do this.
He
Oh,
called,
what?
doing it, he called the vote. We're allowed to have a vote. You can vote against it. Like,
You're saying we can't vote in a
So you
committee?
have how many votes?
How
Your
did you
vote
vote,
is
Maria?
to remove this stipulation.
No,
no.
from the draft, that
So
would
you
then
have-
go to the full town
So
council.
you have 4 yeses and 4 nos?
Penny's not voting.
I'm not voting.
No.
You
Penny
voted
can't
no, you
vote.
voted no.
Penny can't
Not on the
vote. She's not on the committee.
Ah,
So of the voting members of the Bylaws and Ordinances Committee, what was your vote, Maria? Continue what we're doing
Well, I
now.
would say no.
Okay.
Okay, so that's 4-3.
I haven't
Continue
said
what we're
anything
doing
yet.
now.
Okay.
Expect
Well, what's your
more from the
vote?
trustee.
wait, you guys can't vote?
I voted.
Okay,
I voted in favor of removing that
okay, so,
section.
so 1, 2, 3, 4.
No,
Well,
I
what-
haven't voted yet.
You
I'm
vote- did you
abstaining
vote?
for lack of legal counsel, and
Okay.
I'm not saying that I don't agree that what you said
Did you
is
vote?
correct. But I feel like
So
we
wasn't
need
it
legal
4?
information, so I don't feel like I have all the information necessary to make the vote.
Right.
And I feel that it has to go to the finance committee for a full discussion on what
Finance?
document, is it the finance committee that you just recommended that it go to find, to
We're talking
resolve what
about-
documents we want from the library in order to.
That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about whether to take this out of the town council rules. To
We're
take
not-
the requirement. out
We're
of the
not
town
tying
council
anybody's
rules.
hands. If you want
Totally.
the library to come and do somersaults every 6 weeks, you can
Propose
pursue
that.
that. That's not what we're talking about.
But by taking it out of there, basically you're eradicating that we're appointing the 2 trustees.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
It's
Moving that.
eradicating the
Exactly the
MOU,
point.
and that's why I
So
said
this
I'm
committee has just
abstaining.
voted in favor of taking it out of this committee and presenting it to the whole town council. That's all that's just happened. It doesn't mean it's a fait accompli. It just
And I
means,
don't know that we can legally do that since it's a signed
well, he said
agreement.
that that was
Well,
part of
that's
his
why I
proposal,
No, that-
abstained.
pending legal counsel.
We could discuss the legalities, or we can say, to the opinion of council and work those out later.
Yeah.
So we can go home.
But we don't normally do that. That's what I just wanted, for the
But it
record, I
was
just want to
legal
say
to
that
do
we
it.
usually don't vote on things that
Okay.
we're not legally sure that we can vote. So that's why I'm abstaining.
I hear
So I
you.
just want to make
Christina,
sure
what's
that
your-
when we
She's
report this to the town council.
Yeah.
We talk about this discussion, took like an hour. It was not a unanimous vote. I abstained, like the whole.
Like on the record, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who voted no, and I don't know who voted
Well,
abstain.
who's taking,
Maria's
what was
a
the
no.
motion?
And
What
I'm a
was the
no.
exact motion? We should write that down so that someone has
I
that.
just said it.
Whoever's taking notes should write down that exactly. I didn't get it, so.
The motion was to eliminate, well, it's very simple, eliminate Article 1, Section 18. Article 1, Section 18 from the rules of the town council. That's the motion.
But pending, subject to.
Subject to the opinion of legal counsel.
Taking, and I just want to be clear too, taking them out of the rules of the town council doesn't eliminate it from the MOU.
I know, we'll figure that out.
No, I know, but I'm
She's reiterating,
just
reiterating the
reiterating
point.
that we're not then suggesting that.
That we're not gonna
It's a rule
abide
of
by
the town
what
council, yeah.
was in the MOU. Because
The only way
essentially, to
the
me,
law-
with
I
this,
raised my,
the relationship between the town council in the MOU, we're kind of going, we're not gonna do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't,
I think that has to have
So
some
wait a minute, you're
legal
saying-
ramifications to
you're
it.
saying
I
that
think
we're
we're doing it backwards.
out of the rules? I'm
We are.
really confused.
Yeah,
Maria,
But-
let's let Maria talk.
I think we're doing it backwards. I think you have to get it out of the MOU before the town council can agree to no longer do it.
Right,
I
exactly.
think the town council can take it out of the rules because it's already in the MOU. I don't
Then,
think we can do
that,
that.
it would seem to me that our lawyer will tell us. that.
Exactly. All we did here was a
I've never
vote,
even seen.
was
the
to move forward an idea,
I'll
and the
find it.
majority of people.
Well, Eric, I think you should see
voted
the
to move
MOU.
forward
It's
this
not
idea.
really a funny
That's all we
thing. I mean,
did.
it's a very serious thing that people
I'm
took
sure
very
it is. I'm sure it
seriously.
is. I haven't
$10
read the
million
whole-
is a lot of
I had
money.
finished.
The
We
town
have to move
school lost a lot of money. The line of credit was
Yeah.
a lot of money, and a lot of people were very upset about that. So it's a serious issue.
Can I
And
just
that
get the votes
Yeah.
for the minutes? Because it's not at all clear.
Can I abstain? I will abstain. I'll change my,
Okay. Okay.
I'm abstaining as well.
Two
For lack
abstentions.
of, lack of legal
Abstain.
knowledge.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. For lack,
I'm not lack, but I mean, I feel like I don't have all the
Legal opinion.
information.
lack of legal opinion.
Not just a legal opinion. I want a finance opinion as to what the remedy is gonna be in terms of information.
Okay,
So
that's your
this-
opinion.
That's,
Okay.
yeah. that's-
All I need right now is your vote,
Yep, that's fine.
and I have that.
Got it.
Okay, and then this last one, and to me, process-wise, this is extremely important. As people have reviewed the rules of the town council, there have been a lot of suggestions for stylistic changes. Things that actually make sense individually, but there are like 75 of them. And there are 75 things in here that don't change the meaning of the document, but make it a little prettier. And I would just like support to say, we don't have to do that. I mean, if there's anything that changes the meaning of a section and clarifies it, make sure that this can't be misread, then we should change it. And there are some grammatical changes that have been suggested that are important in that. The poor use of grammar changes the meaning. And we know what the meaning was supposed to be, but to have to make every change that is stylistic is a little bit, it just makes the process far more complicated.
Well, if
Can I
I
just ask
may
for an
add,
example? Sorry.
I'll give you an example.
Sorry.
The old document said not more than 4, and the suggestion was to change that to up to 4. Same thing.
Mhm.
In accordance with, change that to follow. The council,
That's okay, I get it.
here and after, change that to from now on.
Okay, I get it.
And it's,
You gave me enough examples.
The
I'm
thing-
ready to vote that I don't need stylistic changes.
Okay.
this one.
It seems like a lawyer's.
Also, in comments, you can see it as to who made them, and he blessed them and he agreed with them.
Well,
If we're going to revise it, making some corrections seem to be necessary, especially since there's some grammar
well, we're gonna come back,
aficionados here.
we're gonna come back and review the actual draft.
Yeah.
So at that time, I would welcome you to say, no, I'm sorry, that can't come out because it was an important provision for the lawyer or whatever, but we need to come up with a single version to circulate to everybody and work from. And I need this guideline in place in order to make that more practical.
I'm ready to vote on that.
On the stylistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do
So
you want to make a motion?
Should we adopt? I make a motion not to adopt amendments that are primarily stylistic, but don't clarify the meaning or intent of the relevant provision.
I'll
Second.
Oh, Jen, you second? Okay.
all in favor? Okay.
Okay, wait, before we leave,
Unanimous.
before
Oh,
we leave.
Maria?
I did that. Yes.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
that's
We
unanimous.
have it on tape.
I'd like to know where Maria's
Hold on, hold on,
going.
hold on,
Where are
hold
you
on,
going,
hold on.
Maria?
Not done yet.
That's a personal question and you can't
Going
ask
to
for that.
Virginia Beach.
Can we just quickly go back to Article 1,
Okay,
Section 4,
Yeah.
the second sentence?
Mhm.
At any election of members of the council, not more than 4 members of the same political party shall be elected for the same term. That
why is that even up to us?
is problematic. Why would we direct what an election can do?
This is not by us, this is in the statute.
It's not,
it's from the charter.
it's
Is it the
not. It
charter?
got stricken from the charter. I looked at it last night. It's
So can the
red line through
motion,
here.
can the motion be to conform section 4 to the town charter?
Yes,
okay, and if
that's
that
easy.
is an actual, I checked all of these rules against the town charter. And that was not in it was in the old charter, It's not in the current one that you can't elect more than 4 members of the same party. That would not, just as an example, as a real life example, that would prohibit Democrats, for instance, from getting a majority of seats on the town council in the next election if we wanted to run that many people.
Why?
Because because there are 6 seats open, and if not more than 4 Democrats can run, that would only give us 6 seats on the town council, because 2 people are remaining on there.
Yeah.
But it says shall be elected, not run.
Why would we run 5 if we can't have more than 4 get elected? Like, it's putting parameters on how many people can be elected. As long as we conform to the majority minority rule at the end of an election, we can't impose that limitation. Because if no more than 4, like for instance, if no more than 4 Democrats could be elected this year, we would then only have 6 seats. We could not get a majority.
Right, so.
But do you realize that the majority on town council is delegated the majority party by the?
No, it's
the Board
not.
of
It's
Selectmen?
no one single party can take more than a certain 2/3 of it. It's not that the majority registrations in New
No,
Canaan
I'm
get
not
that
talking about-
representation.
Hypothetically.
I'm talking about if the first selectman is a Republican, then that's the majority party.
No, but just, so hypothetically, if there's 2 Dems up this year, and the Dems want to run, I don't know how many other seats there are, like 4, that they would want to run a slate of 5 people to run. Because then,
Then we could
say
get 7
hypothetically, they could pick up some of your seats and the 2 existing, and then thereby take a majority. They're allowed to have 2/3, not more than 2/3. So by limiting this to 4, it's just hypothetical, but
Yeah.
it means there's no, they don't even have the chance of doing that.
Yeah. There are 6 seats up right now. None of them are
This year.
guaranteed Democrat. None of them are
So
guaranteed
ideally,
Republican.
the
But in
Dems
the
should be able to
past,
run 6
The
people.
Democrats have run 5 or 6 candidates.
No, they aren't.
Uncontested, last election, only Janet and I ran.
In my election, it was uncontested, 3 at
It's
most.
always been uncontested, to be honest with you, like, so Janet and I
No,
ran.
3 before in the election. When
Okay.
Robin ran, it was Robin, Steve,
Okay.
and.
I think you're confusing with Board of Ed, where they did run a slate of 4 people, 4 or 5.
But we can't, by the rules, how can we limit? If Democrats wanted to run 9 people, they could run 9 people. But to limit how many can be elected in a way that's stricter than the majority minority rule under state statute seems to me to not be
That's illegal.
kosher.
Yeah,
It's really shocking to
yeah,
tell you
it's
the truth.
illegal.
I mean, the idea that we would tell the electorate, I'm glad you guys decided to put in all Dems this year, but we're not going to allow it.
We're only gonna allow the top 4.
How
and
could
then-
how could we have the temerity to do that?
I mean, shouldn't Nick take a look at that? Because that just seems.
He's taken a look at the whole thing. a
Well,
few
that
times.
seems to
Can
be
you
an
bring that to his
oversight.
attention?
Yeah, can he take a look at that and get back
Sure.
to us?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out to you
Yeah,
all. I'd like to-
I'm still
you
trying to
need-
figure out, each biennial election, 6 members of the council shall be elected for the term of 4 years. So 6 members can be elected.
But it says 4 of
But
the same
4 from
party.
each political
So
party,
that-
only top 4, only 4 from any given
any
political
party.
party.
That's
can be elected.
the 2/3, third.
But it doesn't,
Yeah.
the math ain't mathin'.
But
Because the,
But if you had a Democratic first selectman, it would change the order.
it has nothing
That
to
has
do with
nothing to
that.
do with the
It
first
has to do
selectman.
with on any body in any Board of Finance, Board of Ed, Town Council, there's a 2/3, majority to minority, but what?
That's not true. Some of the commissions are 50-50 and.
Okay,
there
but
are
our
some
body,
that have more
our body
Democrats
is
than
legislative.
Republicans.
can't have more than
Why should there be a
2/3
rule that would
any
prevent us
party.
just hypothetically from picking up 5 seats?
Why couldn't the Democrats pick up 5 seats and have it be 7-5? What would prevent that?
Because it's the majority versus the minority.
But sometimes you have a
The
Republican
states-
president
hold on, the
and a
state-
Democratic
Hold on,
legislator.
the state statute says no one political party can have more than 2/3. It does, it.
On
has
the
nothing-
body, it's not townwide,
Yeah,
it's the body.
Correct, it has nothing to do with voter registrations. It doesn't matter if Republican.
No,
Or who voted
That
for
would be
first.
divided government.
So how
Which is
would it,
fine.
how could we not, you guys have 8-4 right now. Republicans have 8-4. Why would
That's
it?
2/3.
Why would it not be legal for Democrats to have 7 to 5?
But it's also true, excuse me,
Hold on,
in a-
I don't
no,
know.
no, I'm not gonna, hold on. In a free and fair election in the town of New Canaan, we may not have ever had it, but we can have a Republican first select person
Yeah.
and a Democratic dominated town council. Nothing prevents that.
Right.
Except for this rule that says you can have
Exactly.
no
That's all
more
we're
than
trying to
4.
say. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out why it's there, but there must have been a legal reason.
Well, let's check with Nick and we'll report back.
I don't know if Nick is the right person. I think the Secretary of State is the right person.
Okay. Stephanie Thomas.
What's that?
Good. Ask Stephanie
It
Thomas.
really is a Secretary of State.
So ask Stephanie Thomas.
I don't think Nick knows what the Secretary of State would say.
It's like a
Probably
rule.
does. Like, you're comfortable in going to Nick, that's fine.
It's
If
the
you
rule
really
of
want a
denial. You can have.
Definitive
a
answer, you gotta go to the
Republican-
Secretary of State.
Can't hear him.
It's strange that you guys don't understand.
All right, well,
That if the shoe were on the other foot, it would be a disaster.
Hypothetical, and it's just.
Why would it be
probably.
a disaster?
It's so hypocritical.
So Nick's gonna look at this.
Yes.
If-
Nick is not the right person.
Why? He's the
Secretary of
lawyer.
State.
He interprets the
Because
laws of the
most
state
lawyers,
of.
unless because election law is very different.
Well, ask the Democratic Secretary of
Well, we
State.
can get more than one.
If this is even legal. Doesn't seem legal to me.
Move to adjourn.
I agree with that.
Can I make, you make a motion
Move to adjourn?
I just did.
and I'll
Move to
second it.
adjourn.
No, but he's the
Second?
chairman.
No,
I'm
the
second.
motion, you guys can make the
Oh,
motion. All in
second.
favor? Adjourned.
I-